to my podcast, to the J. Garcia podcast.
Hey man, wait, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
As you know, I have started this podcast and I wanted to only have top guests. And that's why I have you here today.
I can't disagree.
Right? Yes. So let's have a little conversation. You and I met a while ago online, right? You contacted me and I think you got me by saying, hey, I work at Apple. And then I was like, wait a minute, someone that works at Apple? Because as you know, I don't know if I'm a fanboy, but I'm definitely a big fan. I started our first computer was a PC, and then that was the only PC that I've ever owned. After then, we got a Mac, and we got a Mac early on, and I remember we spent like $5,000 on that Mac. It's just back like $5,000.
They've always been expensive. Totally, yeah. I think I remember. Now you're starting to refresh my memory. I think I tried to hire you. You were doing a bunch of stuff and like a lot of the cool things that I was doing is messing around with batteries and measuring things and building stuff, and you're a bit into photography with the Jag 35 stuff. I thought that was really cool. And then I think it was a time when you were shutting down Jag 35 or trying to, and I was like, well, this guy's in Southern California. Maybe he'll want to come up and work with me, and I'll hire him and that kind of thing. And you're like, nah, I'm kind of doing my own thing, and I don't. Like, you didn't seem interested in it. I was like, oh, that's cool, no worries.
Oh no, wait, I didn't know that. So you had hit me before.
Yeah, we
but I probably didn't know that was you. Like,
yeah, maybe not. Yeah, I might not have like explicitly put two and two together. Yeah, and then I started my own YouTube channel in like I was looking back, like trying to find the oldest video I had was like 2014 or something, and they're horrible. Don't anybody go watch those. And it's like it's like low, it's like 720p, like over my shoulder kind of stuff. This ends up being a bit of a face reveal for anybody that watches my channel that ends up finding this, through cross.
That's right, because you almost never show your face, right? You're always just.
I've got a face for podcasting, so I try to keep it, on set of the camera.
Hey man, listen.
It's less about me. Like that's for content that I work on. I try to make it less about me and more about like what I'm working on. It's like a little project, some of the ways that I use YouTube. I'll have something break around the house, and if I got the exact make and model, I can look it up on YouTube, and there's some other guy or gal that's pulled it apart, fixed it, and then put it up there, and then maybe have 50 views. But one of them's me, and now I've got it fixed, and that's just awesome. So I try and put stuff up, and if I don't think it's super interesting for a large audience. If it's unique, I'll put the part number in there and that kind of thing and throw it up there. So we're trying to keep more regular, poking at the algorithm there and messing with it and stuff. And so the channel's growing. We got like 10,000 subscribers now. Which is like a small YouTube channel, but bigger than some huge companies. Sometimes I stumble across like a massive company. I'm like, how do you guys only have like 2,000 subscribers? Like, this is weird, man. You're not even trying. So yeah,
definitely. It's not easy getting subscribers. Let me tell you. It's a lot of work.
It's happened organically. I don't do like giveaways and that kind of thing. I did one giveaway because I started running out of ways to get rid of a bunch of GameCubes that I was working on.
Wait a minute. You gave me, for those of you back in the day, because I actually started giving some of those away to people that I would meet. You sent me once 3 stacks of $2 bills. Oh. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
And then I was like, what in the world? Like it was really weird.
You were doing live streams or something. You're like building battery packs and you were just live streaming like a 3-hour long thing. You're trying to rival Jack Rickard over here with the streams. And
that's right. Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And that's something I wanted to talk about. You're getting into you're doing more content. It seems like you're like kind of, you got the new shop there and you're trying to crank stuff out and make a business out of it, I guess. I don't know. You tell me. But it's one of the things that I've subscribed to for a long time, which is that value for value model. And it was developed and perfected by a guy named Adam Curry, who's like an old 1980s, he wouldn't be called old, but an 80s VJ from MTV, back when they actually played music videos and stuff. And he's owned a bunch of different companies, and they tried to, he invented podcasting, actually. He's the first guy to put together an RSS feed and an MP3 and make it happen, along with a few other folks. He was recently on Joe Rogan's podcast. If you want to go look.
Rogan, yes, I saw that one.
And so he has a podcast that he does with John C. Dvorak, and I'm an executive producer of. And the way that they keep afloat and they keep themselves and a small staff employed and fed and roof over their heads is by allowing their listeners to donate to the show, to just send cash in. And sometimes it's goofy numbers, like somebody have like a lucky number, or it's like their wife's birthday or something, or it's like there's like a joke hidden in the numbers or whatever. So some people send like, they like the number 3 or 8. So they'll do like $888 and then just cut them a check, send it to them in PayPal. No middleman. There's not like Patreon or any of that stuff in the middle. It's just direct support. They also publish a PO box, and some people will send them little gifts or literal checks with a little note in it, like, hey, this is for, you know, show so-and-so. You guys really knocked it out of the park with this subject. And it's that value. You're giving them value for the value that they gave you, right? And so that was my way of kind of getting your attention and saying like, hey, I think the stuff you're doing is really cool, and I want you to keep doing it. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, the direct support, instead of like having to do a sponsored deal or an advertisement, or worrying about whether or not someone's going to cancel your show by calling up all your advertisers and saying like, hey, we don't like what Jehu's doing now, you know, for X, Y, or Z. Like maybe you flub or you misspeak one time, that sponsor's gone, you know? So that you become, indemnified from that. You're cancel proof if people are just sending you money, right? Like that's your people, that are your listeners. And so they call those the people that send money, and they call them producers, because that's just like in Hollywood, that's what they do. They produce the show. Just if you're making a movie, you want someone to get all the craft services paid for and all the actors show up on time, and that's producers do that stuff. So.
Yeah, there's definitely a model that is very successful. A lot of creators are successful doing that, right? And obviously, like you said, you mentioned Patreon. Patreon's a huge platform that opened up and kind of made it into a structure and thing.
Yeah, and you can give it a name for sure. I like it for having a name where people are like, oh, hey, become a patron, or is it Patreon?
Patreon.
Yeah, become a patron, whatever. Yeah. And go to the thing, and you'll get some behind the scenes stuff and that kind of thing. That's cool. I think it's okay to offer value, or maybe like a separate channel that's for members only, that kind of thing. But same thing with Patreon. If you start touching on subjects, the podcast I've mentioned is called the No Agenda podcast, or the No Agenda show, and they touch on stuff that, like, boy, howdy, they'd have been fired years ago from any radio station, anybody else's podcast. Just instantly, like no questions asked. Like they just point to that time slot in the podcast and be like, "See you later, man." So you don't have to deal with that. But with Patreon, they do the same thing, man. If I called up Patreon and I showed them that you were, breaking the terms of service, you'd be gone in a heartbeat. And whatever money you might have had tied up in Patreon, gone. You hadn't brought it home. There might have been a couple $1,000 in there. It's not yours now. So I'm not a big fan of Patreon.
Crazy. They definitely have booted some like very high profile people off of it, right? And high profile people have walked out of the platform because of that, because it's not a safe place.
And I know in the early days, they might have fixed this bug, but in like the first few months that Patreon got real popular, they would show how much a person's bringing in as their funds. Like, hey, they're trying to make this book, and here's how much money's been raised. Or they're doing a continual podcast, they're gonna do a weekly drop, and here's how much money is supported. And some of those things are high value. They're really awesome products that somebody's shipping out, and they deserve to be making hundreds of thousands of dollars to be producing this thing. You might have a small team behind that. Those folks need to get paid. And so if you just want to donate $5 and you go up there and you see that they're already making 80,000, you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll back off because it's published. It's right there. And if I came in there and I said, I'm going to give you, I'm weird in the way that I try to support other people. I kind of do it randomly, and I don't set stuff up regularly. I don't like having bills to pay. So I might leave $1,000 tip somewhere because somebody was just killing it. Or I might want to give somebody a one-time drop of $100 to say, hey, you did a great job with this podcast or this YouTube channel. Here you go. But I don't want to have a regular thing. So on Patreon, if I went in there and I said, there's no one mechanism to do a one-shot. You had to do a subscription. You had to join one of the tiers or send them a raw amount. And they always assumed that whatever I was sending them was going to be monthly. So if I wanted to send you $1,000 and then bail, for that whole month, it looked like you were making $1,000 more per month, and people thought you were going to get it every single month for the rest of your career or whatever, and that's not true. So then the moment I yank it, so they didn't re-up and become 2,000, then your thing would drop down again and it would become more realistic. So I didn't like them publishing those numbers there. They might have fixed it. I don't go to Patreon.
Yeah, I think it was up to the creator, because I remember when I signed up, and I have a Patreon account, and I make I don't know, like a few $100s a month that patrons give me, right? And I remember setting it up and I'm thinking like you had the choice, like you could either share how much you were making or you can hide it, you know? And I thought like, well, it's a weird thing because yeah, people, if they see that number, people are like, well, I'm not gonna send you my $5 if you're already.
Yeah, you're already making, you know, hundreds of dollars or whatever, but you know, people don't realize that, especially with the stuff that you're producing, there's not a lot of other. You've got some long videos that are, if somebody follows along, it's a full-on how-to on how to have a battery backup for your house. That's not anywhere else. No one in college is teaching that unless you want to, you know, get into like electrical engineering and stuff. You want to, you know, cobble something together because PG&E is about to yank your power because there might be a fire in there with the winds get kicked up. You know, you don't have any other source. You're gonna. There's no matter what you do. I think if you just search 18650, you're gonna get you and like Brunoa, maybe, you know, the super genius kid. You know, like that's all you're gonna get both of those.
I don't know. Is he still active? I don't know. I think I'm in now. There's some new players now in the space. Definitely, everybody's like, wait, batteries are a thing. Let's get in there.
Oddly enough, it's a small world. I got a chance to work with him at Apple. He took a job there as a lab technician, and he's a super cool person. I really enjoyed spending time with him. But Renault has since gone back to Illinois and is just living his best life there. You know what I mean? Pulling in that YouTube money. It doesn't cost a lot to live in Illinois. They got houses for like 15 grand. So
I haven't seen any of his videos lately, so I don't know what he's up to. But yeah, I think he was also kind of going through the same thing where I'm like, I'm tired of talking about batteries all the time. Because it was weird. Because at the beginning, like you said, it was hard to make money talking about this. It's such a weird topic. There were some people that were interested, but not enough to make a living. So then you were always frustrated because you're like, how I want to build these things and I want to be excited about it, but you know, it's like I can't make a living doing it. So it's like there was a bit of frustration there, right? And so you always end up trying to just go with the flow, with like people want to see you. You know, you
start doing videos about your Tesla. You'll be all right.
Yes.
I got one recently. I was watching Jack Rickard. For the people that don't know, is this old timer. What state is he in? He's in one of these flyover states, like Missouri, yeah. And Missouri, yeah. He's been doing EV conversions well before they were cool, or even anybody knew about them. Yeah. And now he's getting out of that business. He's moving over to solar and battery storage. But he had this a really awesome article about the mechanics of going after Tesla, the company. If you're an oil person, like you're invested in oil, you work for the company, you work for their press department, whatever, right? A marketing firm that has them as a client, and you've got hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on advertising. It'd be nothing to spend a few, $10,000 to have somebody write a shitty article about Tesla saying they're going to miss their mark on X, Y, and Z. And if it gets picked up and makes headway, the stock goes down and that kind of stuff. Because what they're trying to do is delay the inevitable, which is the electrification of a lot of our transportation system. So every day, whatever the revenue is per day, each day that you can kick that can down the road and prevent it from happening is money in your pocket, right? So of course they would do it. And that just registered me. I was like, wow, that's really smart. And then shortly after that, Tesla's stock dipped down to like $200 or something like that. It was normally hovering around like 400 for the longest time. And I was like, oh man, this thing's only that cheap because people made a bunch of really crappy articles and scared some people, and then they sold and went down. And I was like, it's going to bounce right back up. And so I bought some, like 200, and I was like, all right, when it goes back up to 400, I'll sell and I'll get out. And then it just started going crazy. And it just kept going up and up and up. And so I ended up making enough money to buy a Tesla, just paid cash for one and picked it up. So thank you, Jack Rickard.
Jack used to say that, right? It's like, this was a free Tesla. The stock.
And it just happened that I invested enough and it swung up high enough that I was able to do it. So it was a lot of fun. So I was going to tease on my YouTube video channel. I was like, all right, now that I have a Tesla, everyone else can quit making Tesla videos. Like it's over. You know what I mean? Like it's not new. You're not unique. Just I don't need to know that there's a whole video on like some weird feature that's hiding somewhere. It's like,
yeah. The weird thing is that I missed that whole thing. Like YouTubers were buying these Teslas and They were getting referrals. They were getting free cars.
Yeah, yeah.
Free of this or whatever. And I was like, I can't afford a Tesla. And I was like, the youth money is not good. I can't afford. And finally, I'm able to buy a Tesla. We buy a Tesla. I haven't made a single video on it because I'm like, everybody else, it's made the video.
Yeah, and it's a free Tesla until it's not a free Tesla. You saw what happened to Rich recently. They didn't like he thought he violated the terms of service and just yanked some a free roadster that he was up for. I'm sure it's happened to other folks. But yeah, I wouldn't rely on these kind of giveaways and handouts and stuff. But I do
really give them a reason.
I don't think they have to. Why would you risk giving them a reason? Because I would just be like, nope, and then wait for somebody else to make us think about it. Yeah, but for the folks that some people had their title of their channel was like something Tesla or Tesla something, And so now that the content's just fully saturated, there's only so many things you can do with a Model X or a Model 3. Like, okay, we'll wait for the Y to come around. Oh, we'll do a video about how we're excited about the Y coming out. It's like, come on, dude. And at some point you're going to run out of stuff, and I think they did. And now that I see some of those people trying to pivot and do different things.
Changing.
They're changing a little bit, maybe even changing their name, that kind of a thing. And I don't know. Some
it has a bit short-sighted.
Yeah. All of a sudden, there's no attractive wife to be involved in it, and the thing just tanks. And I don't know.
But here's the crazy thing. I've been talking about it. I was thinking about this the other day. I've been talking about electric cars forever, like 7 years, right? I built my car 7 years ago, and I thought that was cool and unique and stuff. It literally, like, the dream has become true. Like, down my street, every other car is a Tesla.
Yeah, you're in California, so you'll see that's the Palo Alto Camry, the Model 3.
Yeah.
And everyone's got one. I can throw a rock and hit one. And that's going to move eastward and become a thing everywhere else. And so I'm over here off of 101 near Fremont and the Bay Area. And all I see is just train loads and truckloads of just Teslas, period, just trucking out of here. So I see it's very tangible to me to see that they've got their production up and they're doing really well. And some people are like, they'll poo-poo a company, but the people that poo-poo a company for not shipping their stuff on time, or maybe only doing 10,000 units in the early days when they were supposed to do 20,000 or whatever, they've never owned a company or been a part of making a thing. Because even if you start your own car company and you make 10 of them, a tip of the hat to you. Like you've done some amazing stuff to get it homologated, to get it through all the different regulatory bodies that exist, in the States, let alone the rest of the world. And that's a huge, huge task. And I think they need to be commended for it. And then now to see them sort of scaling up and going, making more and more of these cars. And I'm not a Tesla fanboy. I could kind of take it or leave it, but I don't think that anyone else is going to be able to catch up anytime soon. And so they'll just be like the de facto standard car for lots of people that just want a utilitarian car that does well and gets upgraded and that kind of stuff. So.
I just got my email saying that my Rivian is going to be ready on August 2021.
Rivian's another one, yeah. I used to work just down the street from those guys when I was working at NIO. NIO's that. Do you know NIO?
No, I don't know.
They're a Chinese automaker of luxury they have a luxury SUV that's an electric SUV. All their cars are electric. They're not bothered to make any ICE vehicles, and they started with that. And so I joined their autonomy team to work on level 2 and level 4 autonomy features. So literally the road they're on just down the street is the Rivian office. And so we're, a lot of us are all buddies and stuff. We know each other, and Rivian's doing a lot of the right stuff. They're, it's not vaporware. You can go there and touch it. It's a real car or truck in this case. And, they've made some really smart moves investing with a lot of, big pockets, I guess I could say, Amazon's one of them, that kind of a thing. So,
well, who was the other one? Ford or Chevy? General Motors, no? It was General Motors, I think that they.
Yeah, I haven't followed it. But people like Amazon did some smart stuff in investing in it because they get to be customer number one for their electric fleet. They need an electric fleet. They want one for delivering packages. And why not partner with somebody that's going to put you right at the front of the line? And it's a smart move. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, because it's going to head that way. It's just you gotta take the leap of faith, I think, right? And Yeah, I think that company is going to do good. Like, I like the fact that, yeah, it's not magical technology. That's what I always liked about Tesla. And these guys are kind of following suit. It's like, oh, there's nothing, you're not banking on some magical battery from the future or a thing.
Right.
Or
You're not trying to do like hydrogen technology or, you know, some exotic materials that haven't been tried in batteries yet. They're just going to hit their business model.
Big battery, and the motors, 4 motors. Actually, that's the only weird thing that they're doing. It's like, wait.
Yeah. And if you look at the people that they're hiring, the types of folks they're hiring, you can tell what they're about to do. Like, that's, if anyone wants some like corporate espionage, just go look at who they're hiring. Just keep track of it monthly. And
it's so weird. I talked to one of the engineers in Texas, and he had been like, he was one of the engineers that played a big role on my Chevy Volt. That I drove for 6 years or something, so these guys know what they're doing. They've already been, making kind of electric cars, you know what I mean? Like, now
the Chevy, what a horrible name to go from Volt to Volt. And especially you can't get it straight even when it's right. Like, you got BW. Yeah, you can't pronounce B's and B's anyhow. So it was horribly named. But I had a Chevy Volt, the first gen one, and that thing was a great car. I think at one point I had like 3 or 4 of them. And because a friend of mine, we were trying to reverse engineer the different modules, the motor control, the body controlling modules and stuff to get more power out of it and get more range. Because GM didn't want to damage their brand. And so when they shipped that battery pack, they only allowed the customers to use the middle 50%. You couldn't deeply discharge it and you couldn't top it off. So they created like a faux 0 and 100% in the middle somewhere for you to look at and play with. And I was like, well, we want more. I wanted to have the street cred of having the longest range Chevy Volt. And then I also wanted to take it to a drag strip and run it down the quarter mile, have the fastest one. And then, so you can do both of those things you can do by faking the funk. You can go in there and find the current sensor and just add more copper to it or something like that. There's some things you can do to fake it out. But I wanted to do something that could be released to the public, or maybe somebody plug into a CAN module and like type in some things and get it to go there. So maybe modify their firmware or something. So I had a couple of those. I ended up using the battery pack from one that we bought from Copart as the battery backup for our last place. And so the whole house was, or at least all the light, everything but the air conditioner was running off of a Chevy Volt battery. But I love that car, and I would have kept it if not for the fact that it didn't have any adaptive cruise control or lane keeping. And I had at the time had an hour-long commute, and I'd already driven Tesla with autopilot and a couple of other different cars that had some kind of adaptive cruise control, and I couldn't go back. I was like, no.
But I mean, it was a pretty awesome car, right? Like, you didn't have to worry about it. Like, it wasn't gonna leave you stranded because you forgot to charge it. It wasn't.
I tell people on my YouTube channel, I'm not a tree hugging hippie. I'll burn some dinosaurs. You know what I mean? I'd burn 100 trees to get to work if I had to. I do not care. I don't think it's as big a deal as other people do, as far as like hurting Mother Earth and stuff. But that's why I love the Volt, man. If I ran, I'd go months without having to put gas in it. But if I ever got busy at work and I couldn't get it on a charger, then I was at least going to get home. Where the Nissan Leaf, you just forgot.
You forget to charge it the night before, and then like it doesn't matter how expensive your Tesla is. If you forgot, you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna be late.
Yeah, and exactly. And so that used to happen to me all the time. I'm a forgetful person, and which is why I'm glad you've got a booker now for your podcast. I think that's awesome. He texted me. I was like, hey man, you're still on for the podcast, right? I was like, yes, I totally did not forget about this podcast. So let's do this. So I got to break out the DSLR, got it all hooked up to a capture thing for the first time. So if that drops off, then I've been trying to like push the button because I know that every 30 minutes it tries to like shut itself off. But
it's one of those.
Yeah, I think so. I've got a workaround, but I don't know if it works the first time we're gonna try it out. But
wait, so let's talk about what you do. You're like a software guy. Do you know how to code? You know how to
I've written some iOS apps in my day, which is a lot of like copying and pasting from like Apple, developer.apple.com. And I've modified some stuff, but I'm not a software developer by trade. I kind of balance. I straddle the line between hardware and software. Usually around factory tests. So take an iPhone line as an example. When I joined Apple, it was like 2007, and they're like 95% done with the first iPhone. It's actually one of the reasons I cold called them and Google back in the day. There was just rumors that they were building phones. And I was like, hey, my background is RF, radio frequency design stuff and navigation equipment, satellite stuff for helicopters and the military. And I was doing that for a defense contractor at the time. And there's all this cool stuff that was going on in the Bay Area, man. It was just like, it seemed like that's where all the fun stuff was happening. And I wanted to go there. So I reached out to them. Long story short, got the gig at Apple. And I started to work on the development hardware. So the first iPhone or any iOS device, the first one that engineers get to play with is like the size of 2 sheets of paper. You know what I mean? It's like this big. And they've got the display over here. You've got like your memory over here, and you've got maybe some buttons or something, maybe depending on what kind of product it is. And they're all hot swappable so that you can try different vendors or different options. Maybe you want to have like a higher resolution one or lower resolution one. You like keep swapping around and mess with them. And it looks very kind of how you doing, put together. It looks just like the stuff you work on in the shop. Yeah, it's nothing.
But these are the components that make an iPhone or make the computer or whatever.
It's copy paste. It's plugging the things together. It's like this module speaks. What? Yeah, this like I2C standard. It's like then you literally just solder those 2 wires together and you start talking with them. So it's not as complicated as you'd think to get going. But for people that were strictly software developers, they see a circuit board with wires hanging out and jumpers, and they're just like, oh, it needs power. They don't know what kind of power. Someone just, it's 5 volts, and they're like, I don't know what that means or how to do it. It's like, so it's so out of their world, they'll spin their wheels for days trying to get that board up and running just so they can start typing and working on their code, right? So that was my first job, is I would tackle those things and get them perfectly up and running, and then I'd hand them off to a software developer. And so it's right on that edge, and then they'd run into software issues. I would help them do some of their debugging or triaging of those problems. And then that led me to doing the same kind of thing for the iOS factories. So Apple uses iOS to test its devices as they go down the line. And it's a very powerful computer. In fact, it's the most recent iPad's one of the most powerful computers they've got to offer as far as portables, more powerful than their laptops are. So why not have it test itself, right? And so in doing that, you run into bugs and problems, and I would start to help out with those. And then I built a team around that, and then it just goes on and on and on. And so I got to work on every iOS product from the phone that came after the first phone all the way up to, I'll say iPhone 8, somewhere in that time frame. And then I pivoted over to a different project. So.
Wow. And you had a big team, right? You're a big shot over there.
Now, for the factory stuff, I think I ran a team of about 12 folks, and we supported 17 factories all around the world, places like Brazil and Cork Island and China, of course. And then for the autonomy program that I was working on, I think the team got up to like 80 or 100 people at its peak. It sounds like between 80 and 100 people. So, but how many people you manage does not necessarily equate to like your impact on the company or the product. So.
Maybe. There are metrics, but that's one that people like to use, right? I know early on, like when I started Jack 35, I'm like, hey, the amount of employees you have is how big a shot. So I'm like, yes, hire everyone. And I had like,
I'd argue if you're running a small business, how much money you can bring home and whether or not you can sustain, keeping those few employees employed is probably a better metric.
That's a better metric, yeah. How many employees you can hire, that's not a good metric. That's just overhead.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of capitalism, because that's like, it does get down to, your profit and loss statement, for a company. It's like a lot of people think they've got a company, but what they really have is a hobby that costs them money. Like it's not, they've gone deeply into debt to keep this hobby going. It just happens that their hobby has like a shipping and shipping department and accounts receivable and that kind of stuff. But it's not a business.
What was the autonomy thing that you were working for Apple? Because I remember when I asked you at that time, you were like, I couldn't really tell you. It's just, I could just say it's something related to autonomy. And I was like, and that was around the time, by the way, that the rumors were that Tesla was working on that stuff, and there was the cars. And so when you told me that, and then the rumors were also that Apple was trying to develop some kind of vehicle or something, right?
You and I met at Apple's campus because you went to a long distance EV world record, which that was awesome. And it happened to swing through town. I was like, man, if you want to swing by, let's get dinner. And he brought
It was like midnight. We showed up to the campus there. He opened it up for us, and we're like, "Oh my God, we're Steve Jobs," you know. His office was still there at that time, right?
I think Steve had passed by then for sure.
But you told me his office was still there. It hadn't been touched. Like
that's right. Yeah, they're. I'm not sure if that's the case now. It's been years, but yeah, for the longest time, and maybe still now, nobody wants to be the person that moved into Steve's office, so it's just static. It's still.
Yes. Who's gonna take over that? Who's gonna be like, get this table out of here?
That's we're in the same building. Actually, autographed a laser etched Steve Jobs signed iPad for.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like commissioned by him. It's actually laser etched so that it won't come off. The people that helped push that thing out the door. There's a fun story I'd have to tell another time if I can find somebody to like navigate the NDAs on that. But we, like typical sleeping at the factory and working hard hours to get that thing out the door on time and on target. And so that was like a thank you gift. But it's a weird thank you because like here's a free iPad. I'm like, cool. It's signed by you, so I'm not going to use it, get it all scuffed up and stuff. You know what I mean? So I'm going to put it away in a box. So now there it is.
Hey, man, that's going to be worth a lot of money. Maybe it's probably worth a lot of money now, but these YouTubers are doing. Did you see big YouTuber Marcus? He opened an original like iMac, like the clamp.
Oh no! I'm not sure if I know Marcus. He does like the tech.
Yeah, he does reviews.
Technology and stuff.
But he probably got one of these brand new ones from like the 80s. Like these little laptops, the ones that were blue or whatever, and like it was brand new. Like
they're around, man. Like you'll find those usually come from like warehouses that they lose their lease or something, and then they find all this cruft back there and it gets sold by the pound somewhere. There were some cool ones. I did a video on a place called Weird Stuff Warehouse, which is in the Bay Area, and it's a place that Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak used to shop at. It's like it's got history, and their business model is buying up all of the equipment from companies that went bankrupt. So when they go bankrupt, they auction it off, and it's literally by the pound. They just go through there, and it's like, the gavel or whatever is being hammered, and it's on a scale, it's weighing, and someone's looking at it, it's like, well, it looks like there's a lot of aluminum in there. I could probably melt it down. So you're getting, like just the cost of the raw materials that are there. And so they buy this stuff for pennies on the dollar. They bring it back to their warehouse. They open it up, and they find in there, network analyzers, oscilloscopes, stuff that's like $20,000-$30,000 pieces of equipment. It's old, it's out of Cal, but there's someone else that's got a startup down the way, and they don't want to spend $30,000 on a new one, so they'll buy yours for 5 or 8 or something. These guys,
yeah.
So that's a really cool place to do that. And I think that's where a lot of that stuff pops up. You'll get some pallet of them, and then somebody will put them up on eBay, or they'll not.
Dude, one day you'll be able to send that to one of these big YouTubers and be like, oh, you can open it up and start it up. Like do an open box.
Yeah, the open box, and the battery will be like outgassed, and it'll be all like bulging. The screen will be cracked, and so that'd be great.
Dude, I was so surprised that this thing held so nice after 20 years or whatever it was. This is like a really old product.
Yeah,
first laptop, right? Like Apple laptop. It was the blue ones that came in colors. And then he like opened it up, and then he charged it or connected it, and then he pressed the button. And what was it? OS 7, OS 9? Mac OS 9, I think, was the original. And it came up, and welcome, and it was like the little
music and stuff. Yeah.
I was like, it brought memories back because I've been an Apple user since the very beginning. I think a G3. I think
I got on a kick where I noticed that there were G4s, the lamp ones. Remember those had like the dome on the bottom, and then like
we still had one. Yeah. And
they were if you went on Craigslist here in the Bay Area, there's a bunch of them. And it was everywhere between free and like $30. Like you just get one of these things. And at the time, I wanted to build I wanted to have it be like a solar panel on this side, aiming at the sun, because you could pivot it, right? You get it just the right angle.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the panel was going to be LED lights. And then in the base was just going to be a bunch of like lithium-ion batteries or something like that. And it was going to be like a supercharged garden lamp, like a solar garden light, and you take it out there. And then I was going to have like, this is early days. This is probably like, before the like those battery banks and stuff that you see people, including yourself, reviewing, where it's like a big battery bank and then USB ports and that kind of stuff. So I was trying to build one of those, but that was like practical that you could do stuff with. And so I ended up buying a bunch of them. I think at one time I had like 6 or 7 on my kitchen table, all taken apart and different parts of repair. And then you find out there's like all these different versions and SKUs and models and stuff. And so I got the ones harvested, and then I had all these extra ones. And so I started like putting them together, and I gave them to my sister who was running a school, like a Montessori school at the time. And I would do that. I'd go through and put the last OS that it ever supported, and I'd overclock them, and I'd clean them all out and put like nice new fans in there and new thermal paste and get it all back up and running. Load a bunch of educational software and games on it, and then just bam. And those computers, man, they still serve a purpose. You're not going to be on, the internet surfing the web and stuff, or getting on YouTube. You just can't handle it. It just brings you to its knees. But for the stuff that was written for it at the time, you can do. You can even play stuff like Halo, the original Halo game. That was like
one, yes.
Yeah. Before it released on the Xbox, its actual world premiere was on that Mac.
Really?
Yeah. It just wasn't popular. People weren't like running out and getting a Mac just to play Halo. It just wasn't a thing. So I got Halo up and running on there. It was super awesome.
So how cool would it be now to make a Hackintosh? What is it? Hackintosh? Is that what it's called? Yeah, Hackintosh.
Yeah, there's two kinds of Hackintoshes. What's that?
I like on one of those. So use modern hardware, right, to put it in there, like a modern GPU, CPU, and then like
yeah. You could run, if you did that, you could run anything. You could go all the way back to OS 9 and do a virtual machine or something. You could play all those games. That a modern computer have enough horsepower to keep up with it. You'd be all right.
No, but I'm saying put that inside of that box. Because the thing about that.
Yeah. I thought about that. I thought about like getting like a little mini ITX board, and like you said, maybe like a small form factor graphics card, and just kind of shoehorning it in there. But then because then I was like, okay, fine. And I did a video where I did something like that, but I put a Raspberry Pi in, and then I made a video game console. It's a video people can go find on my channel. And for that one, I rewired. I was able to use the native display. It was like an LVIDS connection, and I had to like solder, convert that to DVI, convert DVI to HDMI, and then plug it into the Raspberry Pi. And so I was like, oh, it works. It's awesome. And I can do that because I got, the hands of a surgeon, and I can solder really well. So, but for the average person, probably not so much. And there's not like an adapter to do it. And then when you are finally done, you have like a 1024 by 768 pixel screen, and it looks like garbage. Like, the pixels look like dominoes. You can count them individually. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to squint or nothing. So then you'd be like, oh, maybe we should replace the display. And now you're like pulling that out and finding something that fits. And that would just be, it'd be a DIY.
It's a rabbit hole, definitely.
Or it's a 3-video series for someone's YouTube channel. And then
the thing is that those early products were a work of like art. Like they were masterpieces in mechanical, right? Because that hinge on that little screen.
Oh yeah.
That little counterweight.
Way over-engineered. It was, and it works. You go decades into the future, and it works flawlessly. You just touch it with one finger, and it just readjusts. And no one's building them like that. And you're talking about I mean, it was before the show started. You're talking about the premium on Apple products and stuff, and buying them. It being expensive even back then. They're expensive because of the process, and this is for the same reason that some watches are expensive. It's not because their metal's more exotic or whatever. Like, it's still aluminum and steel and that kind of stuff. But it's that, we'll take the watches as an example. They'll build 50 of them, and then they'll dunk them underwater because that's the fastest way to make sure that the waterproofing works. And then 2 didn't because the seals weren't quite right, or somebody was like, thinking about the weekend or whatever, so they didn't make. So those get completely scrapped. Like, they'll literally just like, they're not even gonna try and fix them because they'll be oxidized. They'll just send it off to a recycling center, grind it down for its bare metals and dissimilar metals, and then melt it back down. You're done. And so now you've got 48. Those 48 now share the cost. And so you go to the next thing. So we're going to do an altimeter test. We're going to put it in a vacuum chamber and pull all the air out of it. And then 2 of them pop the lids off. And so, okay, cool. Now we're down to 46, and just keeps going like that. And eventually you got 12 really awesome, known, tested, working Rolexes or whatever. And then they go out and they're like, why are Rolexes so expensive? I can get this one down the street for less. Yeah. Go buy that one.
Well, I'm sure Apple doesn't make their computers like that, right?
They sure do. Oh yeah. It's like you would be flabbergasted at some of the things that get failed for just cosmetic stuff that a human eye can't even see. And so they had to create tests that are, you know, computer vision, machine learning type stuff, where they're looking at things with like you know quite a bit about cameras, so you know that you can like shift into a spectrum that our eyes can't see, but the camera can see just fine, right? Like some ultraviolet stuff. So they'll do things where they'll shift over to look for blemishes, and they'll DQ that whole thing. They'll start over, you know, and they'll get another one in there. The Mac Pro comes to mind.
Because that is pretty cool. It's a solid piece of aluminum, and it's machined. Like nobody else is machining a giant piece of aluminum and making
machine. So through that machining process, anything that happens, it would get scrapped, and then that cost of that one going out gets rolled into the ones that survived, and then it gets anodized. And so that anodization thing, it has to be perfectly uniform all the way around. Johnny wouldn't have it any other way. And so if there's one little area that's like slightly not the exact standard gray, but it's looks fine with you and I, it would get rejected. And so, but then that also extends into testing for NAND, or the storage material for where your hard drive is, right? Or the SSDs. You know, at a time Apple was consuming the world's supplies of SSDs, and then the only way that you could get one from another company was because they have a bell curve. If you're familiar with manufacturing, you've got SSDs that are coming across the line, and they're all checked for speed or something. I'll use speed as an example. If the ones that are the fastest are in the middle of that curve, and the ones that are slower off to here, and the ones that are faster, you know, after that. Maybe resistors might be a better example. You want exactly 100 kilo ohms, it's here. If it's 99, you know, 999, it's over here. If it's 1001, it's over here. So you're buying stuff right out of the middle of the bell curve. And that's exactly how they make many products. They're not, when they're making resistors, they're not like, and nailed it. It's just, they make thousands of them. They come out of like a machine gun coming out. And then they just measure each of them and then bucketize them. Blah, blah, blah. And so you come in and you say, I want the most accurate resistors possible. I want the best SSDs possible. They sell it to you from the middle of that curve, right? Now, the rest of the world gets to buy, just kind of throttle it back, or they know that, yeah, it'll probably fail at like 2 years, 3 years, but then by then, who cares? You know, the warranty's over, that kind of thing. That's the planned obsolescence into consumer electronics. So some of that cost from Apple is because they pick the best, they processes and stuff. Yeah, so
no deviation from that, right? Something that comes to mind is the chips out of the wafers, right?
Same thing. Like, yeah, the ones on the edge. The center ones are what you want. The ones on the edge fail more often, right? And then you might have like, I don't know, I'm not a very good processor thing. I know that like Linus from Linus Texas is probably a better source for that stuff, but they know all the models and stuff. But when they're building those, same thing, that wafer, the ones in the dead center that are perfect, or they're more likely to do well, they're the fastest ones. They just get a different model number. And then the ones that are slightly, they all have the potential to be that fast, but in testing, they see that when they ramp it up, it fell over. So then, just like your dyno in your car, you just dial it back a little bit, you know, and then
that's how you rate it.
Yeah, now it's instead of a 3 gigahertz one, it's a 2.8, and no boost or whatever. You know, I don't know the terms that they're using, marketing, whatever. So that's how they do those things, and that's why the overclocking community grew so well, because you could get a bargain. You might have found a situation where they had to meet worldwide demand for 2.8 gigahertz processors, and the process in the manufacturing process, they're getting it all dialed in, and actually they don't have enough failing. They're all landing. They all could be 3.0s, but they still have this skew. They still are selling 2.8s, so they'll just derate them and ship them out, just because they got to make those orders. And then if you want into a best, I don't know where you get processors now. You order it from like, you know, Newegg or Amazon. I don't know where you buy these things nowadays. You're building your own PC, and you would buy the lower one and then try to overclock it, because you know that you're just rolling the dice. There's a chance that you might have got a gem out of there, and with proper cooling and that kind of thing, you could be operating at the top thing. So it's just, you know, trying to poke.
Wow. It's something similar to that is happening with the batteries. Like they're getting rated for certain use, right? And the only way to find out is if you test them, if you load test them, you cycle test them.
Yeah.
Stuff. And sometimes, you know, we're finding out that like using them for like storage, the life is really easy for them, because they don't get asked a lot, you know, there's no stress on them. So they actually end up lasting way more than the spec sheet says. Right. A lot of these batteries are rated for 300, 500 cycles. And I've tested one cheap Chinese one for like 1,000 cycles. Right.
But it's just surprised. Yeah, easily. And people, when I was driving a Nissan Leaf in the early days, you were like, oh, how is that battery going to last? I was like, well, no one knows. I was like, it's the first one. No one knows. I was like, come talk to me in 10 years and we'll see, we'll have some data around it, And they're not doing so hot because they weren't water cooled. But, if they were babied or you took good care of them, they could last 20, 30 years. We literally don't know because we're the first people to have done this stuff. And I'm not surprised to hear that some of the manufacturers at a battery factory, like, running things through probably one cycle because it takes time and energy. I've seen you've had some creative solutions to like recoup that energy. So you're not just dumping it out. That's a lot of my battery projects that I was doing in the garage. I bought an electric bike. I don't necessarily think electric bikes are super cool, or like I didn't even need one really, but I needed some way to deplete my batteries that wasn't just hooking it up to a resistor and putting a fan on it. That seemed kind of boring. I was like, let me come up with a thing where I can cycle these batteries but still have some fun. And I was messing around with lithium iron phosphate cells and actually stuff I bought from you, and like reconfiguring them to be the right voltage that I needed, pulling them apart, avoiding getting sliced open or otherwise injuring myself in doing that. And, repiecing those things together, but it's boring to run it into a resistor.
What's my favorite load these days to test batteries? It's a grid tie inverter.
Yeah. Really, it's genius. I would have, I decommissioned our off-grid thing for the last house we were in when we moved. And I was toying around with getting one of those, but I was trying to find one that had good rate, or that was like not UL approved, but like wasn't going to burn my house down, kind of thing. And so I hadn't selected one just yet. But yeah, that's another one. It's like even a 600-watt one, you just set it over there, let it run, go get it in the morning, and collect all your data, and you're done. And I used to do that stuff when I was at Raytheon. We had a product that the company originally made a radio for the special ops community. And it had a requirement for keeping the radio presets. So just like in your car, you set the radio frequencies that you like or whatever, like these stations, whatever. When you get back in the car, you want, Hot 108, the jams to be on there, right? And so the requirement was just that it worked, that kept that state and remembered those frequencies for 20 minutes. That was it. And they nailed it. They got that, checked that box. But then as soldiers were like using this thing in the field, they'd turn the aircraft off, they'd go get lunch, they'd come back, and all their settings are gone. And they had to spend like, another 10, 20 minutes, like getting it all, get the laptop out, load it up, and push all the, it's not just like manually, you like push all these frequencies for the day and like all these different areas that you might have to go visit. And so they commissioned a battery backup, just a little caddy that would sit underneath the radio, and it was all shock and vibe, and it had its own heater. And it just literally, like, again, everyone makes things seem more complicated than they are. 2 wires that came up to and plugged into, kept it the non-volatile memory from, or the volatile memory in this case, from getting blown away. And that whole journey of helping them develop that product, it was already a radio I'd used previously when I was in. And now as a civilian, I'm able to make this product to make that thing even better, which is really cool. But I learned a ton about batteries. And just like you said, the only way to know what the capacity is, people would ask me that when I was building, like, oh, how do you know this battery's better than that battery? I'm like, well, I'm going to test it tonight. And like, it's going to take all night. I'm like, yeah, it's going to take all night because you have to charge it all the way up to the spec that the battery manufacturer is saying you should charge it at, and discharging it across a known load and counting coulombs as they run across the line. Like, there's no other way to do it. You can project, you could do like a 20% discharge. You could discharge 20% and then extrapolate, make a guess at it, but you really don't know unless you do a full discharge. So
yeah, and sometimes I even tell people, because I get into this conversation all the time, but I'm like, when they're brand new cells, you don't know. They haven't been tested, right? But it's kind of a guess, like these are gonna be this good, because we tested.
Or like the stuff that I know that you and Battery Hookup are involved in. It's like finding these sources. Eric too, I'm not sure if he's doing much of it anymore, but finding these sources that were making massive battery packs and they failed somehow. Maybe one cell in the middle failed and they don't have the expertise to go fix it, so they just dump it onto the secondary market, which you guys are picking them up. Or like the ones, I think I got them from EV West after you recommended them. There were those LG ones with the fan on it that dropped down.
Oh yeah. Decommissioned like bank of like
some data center that had a contractual obligation to have 100% uptime or whatever, something really, really close to it. And so they're going to have these massive batteries, and they don't know whether they're good or not. They kind of like looked at their watch, like, well, it's been 2 years. Let's swap them all out. And we get.
I think they awesome. Need like a requirement. Like they need to have like enough capacity to run a thing for like 2 hours, you know, and
Right.
if you
If you're
like
already, if you're at an hour and 50 minutes, you're not making it.
done,
You're
you
going to
just
lose
don't
money.
replace these guys, you know, whether they're at 60, 70, 80, 90% capacity, it doesn't matter. Like it didn't meet the spec that we need to hit. So it's like, get rid of them. And it's
So,
crazy because it's like truckloads. I think on those, we had like 1,000 of them.
yeah.
And
And then the logistic problem, you got to find a way to like move them. When I got them here, I was like, I came in that wood crate. I bought 4 of them, and I, kind of shimmied the first one out, and I was like, oh my god, this thing is heavy. This is like break your toe kind of heavy. And I did the same thing. I started looking around for a 19-inch rack that could hold them, and I was being cheap, so I didn't want to go just buy a new one. I wanted to try and find a used one. I'm in the Bay Area. I should go find an old 19-inch rack. And so I built it all up. I ended up doing what you did, which was to use the same crate it came in and just stand it up.
Yes. I'm like, it's already here. Although you do need to get some rails because they put some cheap wood and.
Yeah, I screwed in better wood and kind of anchored it in and gave it a little bit of a much better platform to ride on. So now the caster wheels on the bottom and rolled. So now it's like this massive battery bank. I forget how many kilowatts it is, but it's
3 per, so it's at least 12 kilowatt hours.
So 12 kilowatt hours to be able to run my house for a couple of days as long as I don't touch the air conditioner. And that's what I was trying to do when PG&E around here started jerking people around, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to cut off your power." I'm like, "When?" They're like, "We don't know."
Right.
And I'm like, "Cool, for how long?" They're like, "Could be 7 days, could be 7 hours." I'm like, "Dude, 7 days without power? Like, I got to start making plans. You know what I mean? I got steaks in the freezer. What's going on?" And so I was like, enough of this. And so I went out and built that stuff because I'd taken apart the other one. I didn't bother to put it all back together. I liked your solution.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? In California, that's like, we think we're in good state, things are good here, whatever, and then this company's like, no, you might not have power. We're gonna cut it.
I'm guessing they just didn't want to get sued if something did happen. This way they can say, "Oh, we're being proactive," and that kind of thing. Then that reminds me, there was a fire that happened. It was called the Campfire Fire. I think Campfire. Yeah, which was confusing because people thought it was like a campfire that got out of control, but it was actually the name of the road that it was on was called Campfire. And so, anyways, they lost a lawsuit, or they otherwise had to pay the state or somebody a bunch of money. Don't quote me on what it was. I wrote it down because I thought we might end up talking about it. But that money can now be used if you're putting together a new house, or you want to do a Tesla Powerwall or something like that. You can, if you were affected by the shutdowns, if they yanked your power and you're in a zip code or an area that had their power removed by PG&E because of it, or you're otherwise inconvenienced, I think that people should look into that, especially if you live in California. You might qualify for having up to 2 Powerwalls paid for by
what?
Yeah, so
wow.
There's a lot of money that needs to go somewhere. It has to be used on equipment that would make you a power island that would give you kind of that microgriddy thing without being a microgrid. You know what I mean? Just like a battery backup for your home.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. Look, in California, we're passing all kinds of laws that require like solar panels, for example.
It requires solar panels?
Yeah, like by 2020, right? It's like 2021, I think it's like all new construction has to have solar panels built in, like by law. And you're like, there's already too much solar panels. We're trying to get rid of power during the sun hours. Like, there's too much. You need storage. Like, you guys are investing in the wrong thing. Because, like half the houses down in my neighborhood have solar panels, but not. I bet you maybe 1 or 2 have batteries.
Yeah, and and a lot of people think that. A lot of people think, and were told by early door-to-door salesmen for solar, that if the power went out, at least during the day, they'd be okay. They could run a blender or use their microwave and stuff, which is not true. So a lot of that early equipment had safety cutoffs to keep linemen from, that's sexist, line workers from getting shocked for you backfeeding into a system that they're working on. And so, your power goes out, or your neighbor's power goes out, and you got solar, yours is going out too. Now I'm confident because I think I've seen the data sheet for the Powerwall. It has a thing where it clicks over and starts running on battery.
Yeah, that one you can run it. It's a hybrid system or whatever.
They got it approved eventually to be safe enough to do, but a lot of folks are still roaming around thinking that they're going to have power when the zombie apocalypse.
When they have a solar system, and that system goes down. There's no power when the
Yeah.
It's a grid tie system, and the grid is gone.
Yeah. And those grid ties, we've got solar here at the house. It was installed before we moved in. It's a Tesla system. And there's like the weirdest game of hide the P. Like I cannot figure out whether I'm making money or I'm getting screwed on this deal. I don't know yet. We're going to wait. But I know for a fact that like when we're making excess power surplus, I'm selling it back. Of course, I'm selling it back to them for like a fraction of a penny, but then I buy it from them for 17 cents, 13 cents, whatever it is. And so you want to do what Jack Rickard's talking about, which is that selfish solar. So you never want to give the system any back. You want to put it into some batteries or dump it into your car if it's there in the driveway. So I think that's where it's going to go. People are going to be frustrated with being, toyed with or things being expensive, and they'll just start rolling.
Really, the grid should be there for your backup. Like you should have a system that produces enough power during the sun hours that you can use the rest of the day. But the day that you have too many consecutive days, like cloudy days, or your system goes down or whatever, the grid is there as your backup. But you should really be aiming for like zero, like net zero, right? Like, and I think
it's challenging because then the people that own the grid, then they've got to make their business model work where they're just kind of this standby thing, and people are like, this line went down. They were like, yeah, we'll get to it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take a while, but I think right now, since is the beginning of it, you need to be selfish and do that, because I think the other way that's going to work is that enough of us do that. Now enough of us have, so it's a distributed storage, right? So now all of a sudden, now we can become partners of the utility. Because they're like, hey, we need power. And we're like, well, we can turn the switch and feed back, you know what I mean? Like, because we all have batteries.
There's some fun ways you can store stuff. Like, I know you've got some EV conversions. I've got the MG Midget that I did. It took me a long time to get it done, but it's done now. And you have to have a vehicle that's sitting there, but why not have an old classic car that you don't drive but on the weekends and when the weather's nice, and store some stuff in there?
Yeah, it's a huge battery. I mean, cars need huge batteries. Like, I mean, if you want at least 100 miles, you got a small car. It's like 30 kilowatt hours. This is the least. Mm-hmm. It goes all the way to 80. Like a Tesla makes like 85, 90 kilowatt hours, right? I think now a lot of them. Yeah, the Model 3 has a 75, I think, 75 kilowatt hour. Yeah, that's a huge battery. It's a lot, right? And you have two of those cars, and one of them sitting there in the garage. Yeah, that could be storage.
Yeah. Did you see that rumor that Tesla had the capability to flip a relay or something with a software update?
Oh, yeah.
Powering.
It turned out to be fake. They don't.
Yeah. I like right within a day or so, there was one of the engineers that's also here in the Bay Area that had reverse engineered it pulled them apart and knew what the part, what components were in there. And he's like, there's no physical way it can do it. Like, trust me.
It's got a bridge rectifier. Yeah, it's a bridge rectifier. You can't
go both ways. They would have to populate different parts of the thing to make it happen, and they didn't.
Which is super easy to do, by the way. I mean, it's like you just change components. You didn't even have to redesign that board that much.
They might have had that. It might have been I think we looked at some of the traces and stuff. It was probably something they thought of doing, and then just said, all right, there's not a demand for this. Or even the regulatory stuff you had to go through. Like CHAdeMO for Japan had to go through a lot of work to become the standard for that. And it got a lot of backing from the Japanese government because they wanted to have a solution when they had storms and tsunamis, this kind of thing, to be able to keep parts of their grid running on Nissan Leafs, basically. So, but that thing's a goofy, massive plug, and talks over CAN bus to the car to say, hey, is it okay to because what you're asking for is direct access to that high voltage pack.
Yeah,
that's a huge ask. And the car manufacturer has to trust that you know what you're doing when you get it. You know what I mean? That you don't have a bunch of stuff exposed, or you're doing it wrong, or you could short out that battery, and because they've already given you access by closing massive relays, you could do some real damage to that thing. So people should have their wits about them. It made it challenging. I had to. I'm looking to move to Texas soon to try and get away from.
Really?
Yeah, we were just talking about some of these California laws, of which there are many. Yeah, so I'm trying to bail out in
Texas.
The Austin area. I've got a lot of friends that are out there.
If I were to move to Texas, I would move to Austin. That's like the coolest Texas.
Yeah, not downtown Austin. There's too many hippies there, but the suburbs I could definitely do. So yeah, that's what I'm looking to do. Why don't we start talking about moving? All right, so I was like, all right, when I got this MG Midget, and I removed the top wasn't the best. but I live in California, so like I don't even need this thing. So I removed it, weight reduction. I just got that thing out of there, and it was like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe I'll put it back and I'll put a new cover on. No, I never got around to it. So this thing's, there's no way to put the cover up, and I was like Googling around and trying to find quotes for shipping it to Texas covered, because if they went through a rainstorm or something like that, this converter would just get dumped on. So would my high voltage packs and all my leads. You know, like I didn't want water in this convertible. So I put it up for sale recently, and I had to be really picky with who I sold it to, because some people call it like, oh, this is super cool, you know, classic 1960s midget, and happens to be electric. And they're like, great, I want to buy it. I'm like, all right, do you know anything about EV conversions? Do you know like what it means that it's electric? It's only got like, you know, 40 miles of range right now because I'm an idiot and I bought the wrong pack. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll go. And like my brain starts racing. I start imagining this person like goofing around in the trunk and like laying their arm over, you know, a high voltage rail and like getting zapped or, you know, injured or worse. So I was like, all right, maybe not. I just like, I'm not gonna tell it.
It's not for sale anymore.
Not for sale anymore. I changed my mind. And I ended up finding a guy that had a Porsche Speedster that was converted. He didn't do the conversion, but he had it converted or bought one that was converted. And those things, you know, had old like a Warp 9 motor. It's got brushes and that kind of thing. So there's maintenance that needed to be done to it, and he had to learn about BMSs and the Elcon charger. And so he's tinkered with it, and he understood enough. I was like, hey, if you touch this part, you'll probably die. And so I understand, I got it. And so I sold it to him.
Oh, you sold it already?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Like just a few days ago, I had to, man. I really would have loved to have taken it with me, but it was just gonna be, you know, MG midgets are not worth a lot of money. Like, let me tell you, this is another thing. I know you did a breakdown for what it costs to convert an electric car, and so did Rich Rebuilds. And a lot of people think like, oh, I'll just buy this thing and this, and I'll put it together. And I'm like, no, you're gonna spend 20 grand converting your old jalopy. And so then it's like, whatever your car was worth, now you're negative 20 grand to just get it back to being a rolling working car, which if you already bought it as an ICE car, it already was a running working car, and now you're negative 20 grand. And so MG midgets, when they're just pristine and they're really nice, you probably win like a car show if you entered it. You know, they're not more than 15, 20 grand.
Yeah.
This one was like beat up and, you know, and had its problems and stuff. And so it goes down, down, down from that. And so it's going to end up being almost as much to ship it as the car costs. So I was like, I'm gonna let it go.
So you have to sell it because you're moving to Texas.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I want to talk about this one that you said about your prediction that you will see more and more unpainted cars. Wait a minute, that's controversial. That is. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yeah, well before the Cybertruck came out. Because they're not painted either, and the DeLorean
painted, right.
It's not painted. The DeLorean wasn't painted.
The DeLorean wasn't painted.
Right, and I was in France, and they had when was this, like 2014, 2013. They had electric cars. I can't remember the make and model, but it's like a small smart car size, just fit two people, run around car that you could just walk up to an RFID badge and get right into it and take it. Of course, you previously set up an account with the company or whatever, but like if you were walking and you're like, my feet are killing me, or I want to get dinner from a place that's a little further away, you just grab one of these cars right from the street, like scooters are now, right? Like all the Uber and the Lyft scooters and those kinds of things. And one of the ways that they stayed eco-friendly and also reduced their cost on having to repair little dents and dings and stuff was just to not paint these. They had them made, it's just the raw metal, and little blemishes and nicks and dings on raw metal are not as obvious as a scuff in your perfect paint. And these things are utilitarian. People are just borrowing them for an hour to run some groceries home or to, you know, go to their girlfriend's house. They're not babying these things. It's like a village bicycle. Everyone's getting a turn on this thing. And so that's one of the ways they did that. And then I had an opportunity to tour the factory at BMW. What was that? Okay, it's not important where it is. Anyway, so I was talking to one of the guys that was giving the tour, and we went through the paint booth, and they've got these massive robots that are doing stuff, and they've got these waterfalls underneath them capturing all the lint and dust that might be in the air. And it's this huge ordeal. and they have baking rooms where what they call body in white, the car with the primer on it is moving through a series of rooms where it's cooking it. It's just irradiating with a ton of heat. And then it gets painted, it gets cooled off. So now you can paint for storage, that kind of stuff. And it gets cooled off. And then it goes to another area where it gets painted. And then that goes through a baking process with massive lamps that are heating up. And so he dropped a little nugget on me, and he said that 60% of that factory's resources, so electric, gas, otherwise, go to the painting process.
Wow.
So overnight, if you decide not to paint your car, you are saving 60% of the manufacturing process. Or maybe not entirely manufacturing, because you could be bolting on like gold fenders. I'm saying 60% of what the factory costs you to run, operate, as far as utilities go. So there's a massive savings there. And then you could also put I think people are going to put a tree hugging hippie spin on it to say like, oh, this is better for the environment, that kind of thing. Not to mention the chemicals that don't get sprayed, and the paint, the handling of the paint, and that kind of thing. So when I saw the Cybertruck come out, again, I'm with you. I think it's as ugly as sin. But it didn't have painted panels. I was like, it's genius. And it reminded me of Henry Ford's quote. To simplify his product, his assembly line, he only offered one color. He famously said, you can get that car in any color you want as long as it's black. And so they only had to store one color. They only had to shoot one color. If a fender got messed up, you could swap it out with another one. You didn't have to go color matching or keep track of them in your inventory system. It's a lot simpler. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of those as people get wise and people start treating their cars as we were talking about earlier with the Model 3s. People are just buying them and just using them, and nobody like, they're not like in love with it necessarily. It's just, it gets them from point A to point B, and it's the best one that you can buy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not babying mine. Literally, we're just driving it. Like, it's a scratch. My wife, scuffed it up the other day. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, you take good care of it, but you're not like, or you're not. When you ordered it, did you have a preference in color when you ordered yours?
I ordered the cheapest, whatever didn't cost me.
There you go. Yeah, white's usually the cheapest.
But now it is.
Yeah, and the safest statistically.
Because they could see you. You're more
white cars are more visible to other drivers, and so if you pull the NHTSA's data for car crashes, white cars.
There we go. I guess we just decided what color my Rivian's going to be.
They go for white. White's hard to keep clean, but it's there. But I think a brush.
Not as bad as white. Oh, white. Yeah, white is really hard to keep clean. You're right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
It could be a point of pride for you. You'd be like, look how I've got a garage. Yeah, that's where this thing sleeps.
No, man. The speaking of unpainted cars, my old classic unpainted cars sleeps in the garage. The Tesla stays outside. The Tesla, I don't care about the Tesla.
Yeah, I had the same problem with ours. Like that car, the MG Midget was a convertible, and so you couldn't get caught out in the rain. It would just it was a rust-free Survivor. They got pulled out of a barn up in Northern California, and I'm not allowed to be the guy that ruins that. So yeah, our nice new $30,000 cars out in the outside.
It's out in the street. Yes. Well, look, if it gets stolen, you just order another one tomorrow. It'll be back.
Yeah, as long as you're not picky about what kind, you just get another one, and it'll show up at your door, right? Like Tesla will just deliver it to you. It's done.
No, I have to go pick it up.
Oh, you have to go pick it up?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. They don't deliver it in my hometown somehow. I'm like, what? It's weird. Deliver it to me.
They're delivering it to lots of folks for the longest time.
Yeah, there was a weird thing because I only had to wait like 7 days from the time I ordered it to the time I had to pick it up. It was like, at that time, people were like 2 years waiting in line to get the 35,000 model. I'm like, dumb people, you just buy the $30,000 model, you can pick it up tomorrow.
I had to wait 2 years, but for a different reason. That's because I can't afford new cars. So I've only paid cash for cars, and so they've got to be at least 2 years old.
Oh, really? Do you have to? So you bought it used?
I always buy used. Yeah, I'm an odd duck.
Wait, so you bought a Tesla used?
Yep.
Tesla. Wait, so apparently they're holding their value incredibly well, right?
Yeah, and everybody loves saying that about the car they bought. Like, this Honda always holds its value. My Toyota holds its value. But statistically, especially amongst EVs, I bought a Bmw i3 that was 2 years old, just come off a lease. And when the guy that I bought it from, well, of course, it was leased, so he didn't actually pay the full amount. But if you pull the sticker out of the glove box, it was a $58,000 car. And it's got the text, carbon fiber, sat nav, it's got lane keeping, adaptive cruise control, which is the reason I bought it, and just all the bells and whistles, got everything. You play movies on the screen, all that jazz. So you could argue it's worth 58 grand. 2 years later, the thing was worth 17. I think I paid like 18, 19 grand for the thing. So it's just dramatic drop off. For that. Not all luxury cars do that, but EVs are doing it a lot worse. Model 3s, for some reason, are holding their value. Someone did a recent report. I saw it on the two guys, you had it on your podcast a while ago. Is it not the Now You Know guys? Tesla Time?
Yeah.
Yeah, is a guy and his son, or I'm not sure what their relationship is. Yeah. They just did had a little blurb on there, and someone had done the math and actually like pulled records from DMV and figured out that yes, Model 3s, I think it's because of like a supply and demand issue, and also because they're kind of like iPads in that like there's only a couple different configs that you can get, and it's like as long as it's not damaged and it's got good range still and it's nice and clean, it's identical. It'll be 2 years older, but it's almost identical to the one you'd get that's brand new. That's a 2020 model. Right? They have enough facelift on it. There's nothing dramatic. And actually, I ended up getting one that you can't order now, which is the long-range rear-wheel drive. So I now have like one of the biggest ranges you can have in a Model 3 that isn't available. It's not a selectable configuration anymore.
Now they're dual motor, right? Like if you
they're all dual motor. Yeah.
Standard range or long range is dual motor.
Dual range is safer and smarter, so I get it. But I like the idea of having more range. It's nice, and like I said, paying cash for cars. So
yeah. I mean, it's an incredible car. I mean, you love it, right? You love it.
I love it. Yeah, it almost got me in trouble with Tesla's security, but it's nice.
Right. Are you snooping into the system?
Yeah, a bit. I ended up buying it from a Tesla employee.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people that work at Tesla. I've hired them and work closely with them and been involved with them at NEO especially. And so I knew some things about some behind the scenes kind of stuff and some how the sausage is made. And I knew that they had a system. If you're a software developer and you're working on a new feature and you think you're done with it, you got it. You can push it out to a test vehicle that's in the parking lot, and then it'll download to the car, and then you can walk out there, get in it, and take it to lunch and goof around with the new feature and see if it's doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Some companies call it a dog food program where you eat your own dog food. And so I knew that existed, right? And I also knew that they extended that to some employees' personal cars. So if you submitted your VIN number, you could push out more closer to top of tree builds for the software. And it's great. It's actually really smart. You let 20 employees use it before you send it out to thousands of customers. You get a chance to find these bugs and stuff. And so when I bought it from him, I asked him, I was like, hey, is this in part of that system? Or is it, before you give it to me, do you need to yank the VIN number out of like a server somewhere and have it? And he looked at me like a bullfrog looks at a wristwatch. He had no clue what I was talking about. I said, okay, cool, fine. So like you work in marketing or whatever, like maybe you don't know that's a thing, fine. So I ended up taking it down south. We had it for a long road trip. Went down to Legoland like days before COVID shut down. And even Legoland, everybody had like bailed on all of their reservations. So it was like a ghost town. It was awesome. So I had no lines, got to go to places. Come back. I don't know why I told you about Legoland, except that it worked well, and it had a bunch of cool features and stuff. So I get back, and there was some new stuff that was coming in, and like on the display, and I was like, cool. I'll make I sent something on Instagram, and I made a video about the new feature. And then as soon as the video got popular, got picked up by a bunch of different Tesla blogs. They picked it up because the feature that I was mentioning hadn't come out yet.
Come out.
Yeah, and so then I got contacted and they're like, "Hey, are you posting on social media about your car?" I'm like, "I am, but what's in your business, right?" And they knew because when I filmed it, I hadn't changed the nickname of the guy that bought it from me. I hadn't changed his nickname for the car, and so they looked into their, I don't know this for a fact, but they probably just looked in their short list of people that had that version of the software installed, and then found the one that was nicknamed blah, and then they were able to reach out to him, and he probably said, I sold it to Julian, and then he gave him my phone number and stuff. So yeah, fun.
Wow. So you had a feature that wasn't out because he had one of these test units, but he didn't know?
Yeah, I don't know how. Later I learned how he got into that system and how it was likely that he could have forgotten. But the way that I obtained that information was from another person at Tesla, so I don't want to get them in trouble.
Wow,
but I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, what's up with this?" And they're like, "Send me the VIN, I'll take care of it." So yeah, it's fun to have people that know what they're doing. Wow. Yeah, I had there was a bunch of features, new animations for the way that they show pedestrians walking across. Some video games that hadn't been announced yet, or they had said, "Oh, we're working with this company," but they hadn't said it's coming or what version it's coming out. I had like a 20-minute long stream that I did, a quick live stream. I was kind of playing around with that. I did a live stream with my daughter. Yeah, and we played with it and stuff, and people went nuts online. Like, this guy's got this new video game. How come I don't have it? Which version is it? How do I make my car? Find the latest update. So it was fun.
Oh man, did you hear the story where I almost got in trouble with SpaceX
for that battery?
That battery, dude.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So they sent me an email. Basically, they say,
be careful what you say.
No, I mean, I didn't. Basically, they said, "Hey, this is highly regulated hardware. Like, it's not us, it's the government."
Yep.
It's like, right? It's part of a missile, essentially. It's a defense. It's by the defense, whatever department that is regulated. So it's like, if you get caught shipping it, it's illegal. If you get caught shipping it outside of the country, that's highly legal. They'll put you away for this. So you're not supposed to have it. It's stolen, as far as we know, because there's no way that we can grant.
Oh, when you got that, a couple other YouTubers got it, and I thought same thing we were talking about before with the Weird Stuff warehouse. My mind already figured that there was some lab that got decommissioned. It was a prototype in there, happened to be SpaceX, big whoop, and somebody probably just gathered all the stuff that was on the benches, put it on a pallet, wrapped it with cellophane, and sold it for pennies on the dollar, by weight. And then somebody else recognized that these were batteries, and it kind of made its way through the system, and it ended up with you and a couple of the YouTubers. That's how I figured it happened. But if there's not a paper trail, someone saying, "Here's the pallet I bought," and the itemized list of what was on the pallet, because if you did that, barring the whole government restrictions of not sending it to other countries and stuff, you could tell people to go pound sand because you legally bought it.
Yeah, but it's not this. This one is like, listen, you can do this the easy way, or we can do the hard way. Like, I don't want to have
all of a sudden somebody like doesn't knock on your door.
Well, they were on the phone with me, right? I called the number, right? Because I thought, like, okay, I'm like, all right, because I went and looked up the regulations and the fines and the jail sentences for good guys, and I was like, okay, this is pretty hardcore stuff. I'm like. So I called the number, and then she goes, "Yeah, man." They were super nice, by the way. They're like, and they go, "Can we send someone like right now?" They're like, "I can have someone jump."
Oh, they're not gonna trust you to mail it back to them. Wow, they're ready to send someone. Wow.
And I go, "Yeah, I'm here usually all night, and this is late, like this is in the afternoon." And they're like, "Okay, there's two guys. Are going to send two guys. These are top like security officers. They're going to show up. They're going to bring a suitcase thing, like a Pelican case. You put it in there. And then, we'll just like it never happened or whatever, right?" So I'm like, all right. But I was nervous because I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, who are they sending? They're sending two goons. Like,
you don't need to be fucking around and get deported. I feel you, man. I know.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not even American. They can kick me out for this.
So like, Julian's racist. I know that.
So no, it turns out those dudes were super cool. Like you'd think that security guards are just gonna be like rent-a-cops. They're just dudes that are like ex-military guys, right? Yeah. They don't know anything about Tesla. They don't know anything about SpaceX. No, that's not the case. If you work at SpaceX, I think you more likely than other places, you're a fan of the mission, and so you're like caught. These guys knew everything. they were like, they knew all the stuff that because they stayed here for like an hour and talking to them.
Oh, nice.
And I was kind of probing and like, hey, what about this thing? What about Starlink? And they're like, yeah, it's up and running. We're playing video games on it, you know, and we have stations and the thing. And so it was pretty cool. They were super nice about it. But yeah, had I made a video about that and taken it apart, I would have been in trouble. They would have been.
Yeah, because you can't. It's like you could take the video down, but as you know, once something's published the one time on the internet, it's there, it's everywhere. And I do that now. Like whenever I see stuff that's questionable, I'm like, oh, that's gonna get taken down fast. I'll save a local copy for myself because I'm like,
yeah,
it's
out. But it was. I was nervous there for a little while I was waiting for these guys because I didn't know if they're gonna be nasty or mean or whatever.
That's a cool way to make some friends. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they sent us some shirts, right?
I was worried.
You almost worried. They didn't send me a shirt I could fit in.
I saw a glimpse of it. I don't know if you went back and took down that video where it was even in a frame.
I did cut it out. I was like, nope. I just like edited the video.
I gotta go learn it. I gotta go learn to mess with those features where you can edit a video after it's been published because it's really detrimental to pull one down. But the guy from Dirty Tesla, I was talking to him. And I was like, hey, we were talking about like, is there some way that I know how? Because there was those websites that showed how many people had a certain software version for Tesla. There's an API that's exposed for some apps, and so you can know with high accuracy which cars have what software version. And I was one of 4 people who had that software version. So I was pinging him. I was like, hey, what's up with this stuff? And he was telling me you can edit out parts of your video, and you can also do blur out stuff, like maybe a traffic sign you didn't want, like a street sign you don't want people to know you're on that street. I gotta go play with those. But I saw yours, and like all those plugs are called Canon plugs. It's like a name brand for the type of things that like push on and index. Yeah, you can't put them on wrong. They're soldier proof. You just kind of rotate it, like it clicks into the pins to help with the alignment. And then as it's going on, there's another outer ring that you spin around, and it makes the insertion happen at the right rate and stops. It does a detent to make sure that you can't reef on these things and like, damage. Well, anybody can damage them, but it's hard. So all that stuff. And then you have the little wire ties for the nuts to make sure they don't back out and stuff. Yeah,
safety wire. Every single nut bolt on that thing was safety wire.
Yeah, someone knows what that thing weighs down to like the gram. That thing is highly engineered. For somebody who worked on a similar battery.
I took it apart, right? I just didn't show it in camera. I didn't record it, but it was just 18650s inside. They're just potted inside. They're like potted in like.
There's probably some thermal management stuff in there. Keep it from getting too cold. Yep.
Yeah, it's all like it was like machine aluminum, a lot of it, and then it was a circuit board. By the way, the batteries were on an aluminum enclosure, and then they were on a circuit board, and then that circuit board was epoxied into the bigger the canister, right? And then it had space, and then everything was sealed. It had like all kinds of like seals on it, and then it had the outside shield.
You have like foreign objects and debris getting in there. Compromise the mission exactly.
And then it also had the valves.
It had depressurizing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not only that, but it had a rupture. Like it's like a piece of foil or aluminum that is scorched in an X, and it's made to burst at a given PSI, pressure. And I think there were, what did it say? It said how many, like I think 10 PSI.
Yeah, they have the same thing. Or on the if people look at the top, if you look at the top of a capacitor in any of your power supplies and stuff like that, it's got the exact same thing, and it's like a controlled outgassing. So it's like if it's going to fail, you want to give it an opportunity to fail right here in this spot and in this way versus wherever the weakest spot is, and you get to find out. Yay! It's like it's a surprise each time. You don't want surprises when you're doing you're sending stuff to space. It's not the time.
Well, even in here, like the Panasonic cells had that little. It's like a moon, like half a disc. That's that on the bottom, so that it ruptures there.
And outgasses in a more controlled fashion.
Yeah. Oh, and then like Teslas have the Pyro Fuses. Have you heard about those?
I'm familiar with Pyro Fuses. Yeah, where they need to disconnect fast and
at a given power level.
Right. And to have
You
it,
can't leave it up to like, whatever. The fuse is going to blow up or whatever.
yeah.
Because they're highly affected by temperature, by humidity, all kinds
I
of
think
stuff.
there's also some rare edge cases where, depending on the fuse material, how thick it is, where it can become molten and then still be conducting electricity. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or it might break and then the molten pieces like lay on each other again and reconnect. And so you have a second onset stuff. So it just depends on the fuse. That's, and yeah,
You're
pyro stuff.
leaving a lot to chance. And he was like, nah, screw that. Let's just do a pyro fuse. That thing just blows up whenever it reaches the right amount of current and you're done. It's blown.
Yeah, that complicates stuff.
Right? Yeah. So Teslas have that now. Yeah. It's like when the fuse goes, it goes. There's no.
That adds a layer of like carefuling that you have to do if you're taking one of those things apart. You know what I mean? If you're a regular technixan or something.
Yeah,
like
I wonder.
Mom and pop
I've
repair shop.
never exploded one. We should do one of those. I always wanted to get. High frame rate cameras are really expensive. Like the Phantom line of cameras, they're like $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 cameras, right? But there's this one guy that made his own Tesla. His name, his YouTube channel is like Tesla something, and he was one of these guys that was messing around with batteries in the early days, and he developed his own high-speed camera, and you can buy one for like $2,000 or something. And I was like, that
sounds familiar, like an open source kind of project.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like I'm trying to. Yeah, I think I saw something like that where it's like the main board and then the sensor, and then you like bought all the other pieces. Like you get that basic.
Well, no, now he's got like a full camera. It's like with the machine aluminum housing and mount, lens mount, and like it's a full product. And it's like not expensive. It's like $2,000, and it could do. I think it could do like 1,000 frames per second or something. It's like crazy, right?
That sounds pretty cool.
So I was really tempted to do that, and because I want to do videos, because a lot of people no one's really blowing up batteries. Like no one is really testing out like how they will blow. We lost your signal.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch over. There we go. I think my little capture card got hot. I grabbed.
Ooh, there you go. So I was like, I probably should get one of those and then just start blowing batteries. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so, I have this battery coming up. It's an ammo can. So I just bought a military ammo can.
Yeah, I built a Bluetooth speaker in an ammo can on my channel. Yeah.
I'm stuffing it with batteries. I'm like, this is a perfect battery can. It's a metal canister. Then people are like, well, yeah, but what's going to happen if they blows up? Like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. It's just
you'll be all right, because you're talking about it blowing up as in outgassing, right? Like the thing that sells
outgassing with flames, because the lithium batteries usually,
Yeah, oddly enough, I got to work on helping to select a man pack. So when I was in the Army, we had a radio that folks would carry, and it had a sealed lead acid battery, and you had to carry like 2 or 3 of these things, and it didn't last very long. And it was kind of like, yeah, it was not great. And they're heavy, right? So you're a soldier, you got all your ammo, and you got your gun, so you can add in these things.
Lead acid battery.
Yeah,
come on.
Lead acid's super safe, and it works. So they wanted to move. They wanted to move over to. There was a company that was trying to get a contract with the military to provide a lithium-ion solution, and there's a couple competing companies that were all trying to do that. So you knew the form factor had to be like this size. It had to have this kind of connector in the corner, so you could just be dropped into the radio and you close the lid and you're good to go. And so luckily it wasn't like, bringing in spades like for your UPS or something like that. It had a cool form factor you could just drop in. And so they had to mimic that. And we got to shoot some of them like at the range. So they'd set some of them up, and as part of the testing to select the right one, they would shoot each one of these things, and the ones that had proper like lithium-ion pouches and stuff went off like a rocket. You've seen these things where they just when they start to fuel themselves and just coming out. And you imagine that being on someone's back and like just dumping into like their meaty part of their flesh. It's not good. So that's when I got introduced to lithium-ion phosphate. Somebody had come up with one that you could puncture it with a screwdriver, shoot it with a 5.56 round, and it would. The battery would be bad, but it wouldn't outgas that aggressively. So the ammo can, for people that do RC, like flying helicopters and planes and cars and stuff, they tell them, the hobbyists, to charge their lipo packs, the pouch ones, in an ammo can.
In an ammo can, okay.
And just to close the lid and maybe drill a hole to let the leads go in. But if anything happens and you're, inside sleeping or having dinner and it decides to outgas violently, then it's inside of an ammo can. It's not going to burn down your house, right? So you're already there. So what I would do is I would just poke a hole in it somewhere. So that
valve. I actually bought a valve, like a relief valve, and I thought we'll just drill a hole, put it in there, and then it's still sealed. You can't get water in, but whenever the pressure.
Are you trying to have it be waterproof, or you just want it to be ruggedized?
I just wanted to have ruggedized, and I mean, I do worry about people being dumb and making batteries catch fire, right? Like, and burning their house down. Now, luckily, I have those boards, the PCB boards.
Yeah,
they're redundant, like fuse everywhere, right? And so people mostly blow them up when they put batteries that are unbalanced and stuff, and when they're building them, right? So they're kind of inconvenient because they're always having. We haven't had a single fire, and there's I think there's over 50,000 of these boards out there now. It's like an open source thing. People are building small batteries and big batteries with them, but not a single fire, right? I kind of went that way where they're kind of wimpy. If you make any mistake, you just blow up a bunch of fuses.
Yeah, but if you wanted to get high power, just like the one that's on your shirt, you can stack them up, and then you're not pulling as much on any one cell or any one PCB. You're pulling from the bottom. I think that kit is one of the coolest things. And again, tip of the hat to you. It's just like making a car, like getting all the way through that process, working on the Gerber files, designing it, sketching it out, getting it out to a fab house to have it made. Like, that's all real work. And a lot of people don't take that extra step like you've done to make a thing. And now it's in the world. I've seen tons of YouTube videos where people made their own power walls out of them.
People are using them, and
cool. And I'm like, because it exists. You made it. Otherwise, you could always say someone could do this, or wouldn't it be great if? But you actually made it, and people are ordering it. And so the only thing that sucks for you is having to do all the logistics stuff, actually getting them out there. I know that's a pain in the butt sometimes. That's why usually the wind gets taken out of my sails for a lot of fun ideas that I want to do. Is okay, after I build it, how am I going to get it out there? And open source is one way to do that, where you can just offer the stuff up and say, hey, if you guys want to do this, I'm done doing shipping and receiving for people. So here's the files. Here's how to get these. Here's the bomb. Go to town. Yeah.
Well, do you know what's the crazy thing? On my website, I'm selling these things, right? The included, what's included in the package, they're all hyperlinks. And I'm literally giving people my sources. This is where I buy the stuff from the Chinese people. And you can click on it, you can go and buy it yourself. You can
buy the kit.
And you can order you can download the Gerber file from the thing. So I'm giving people, it's an open source project. You can go and buy the stuff yourself, or you can just click the buy now button and you pay a lot more, but you're literally getting all the stuff that it's already worked out for me.
I'm a big geek. And so in the garage, I've got books of samples of resistors, all different sizes and shapes, stuff, and microscopic ones to the big ones. And I've got racks and racks of capacitors and things. So I can always repair most anything. It's a hobby of mine. I like to find old beat up stuff, especially consumer electronics, and fix it up. I feel good. It's very therapeutic for me to go through that process. And I feel good that it works again. And then I try and find a home for it. But anyways, sometimes I'll find some old video game console or something like that. And for a fact that this thing's from the 80s, that all the capacitors in this thing are bad. They could use to be replaced. Or I might find an old arcade machine, the stand-up arcade machines from the 80s that have a CRT screen. All of those, the circuit boards and the CRT, all need their capacitors replaced.
Okay.
If you want to have good signal quality, you're not chasing problems and you don't know where they're coming from. And so I could probably go out in the garage and one by one pull out the thing, write down the value, get the other one, and then go out and find them. Or I can Google that make and model and type in space capacitor kit. And there's some guy, it's either on Etsy or eBay, that's already done it. And they've already individually baggied. It's all ready to go. And I can just order one or two of those and I'm off to the races. It shows up in the mail. And when it shows up in the mail, it's like a little gift from past Julian. It might take a week or two to get there. I forgot about that project. I'm gonna do that tonight. You know what I mean? It's it's way better than trying to source a bunch of stuff from DigiKey or Mauser and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, DigiKey. I hate DigiKey. I just ordered some connectors. I asked Michael Bream, right? Because I'm looking for some connectors to connect the balance lines out of battery boxes. We're doing a conversion here. And I'm like, okay, so we need to like have the BMS go into the battery box. Like, what kind of connectors do we put? It's got to be the automotive grade connectors so that it's watertight. Because if you go over, a river, like who knows?
Got enough pins for all the cells plus ground and yeah.
So then I find one. It's a Deutsch connector. It's like it's
Deutsch,
like, it's like apparently it's like a thing that automotive people use, right? Like. And they have it all kinds. So I asked Michael, I'm like, hey, is this the connector that you use? Have you ever used these? And he goes, no, I like using these other connectors. So he sends me the name and he tells me that he gets it at Mauser, right? Or DigiKey. So I was like, oh, okay. I'll just, search the term and find the one that I think I need. I order it. But it literally is just the one part of the connector. There's like 7 parts that make these connectors. It's like the one thing, then there's the male and the female. Yeah. Then there's all the pins, and then there's the little rubber on the back, and then there's a rubber ring on the front. There's like and I just got the one part, and I'm like, I was like, forget it. I'm just gonna use the Deutsch one that I can. That's
why I bought. I've got plenty of different ways of making a pedal for that MG Midget for my conversion, but I knew that if I bought the Lexus pedal from EVTB's website, it came with the connector and the pins and the little back clip. And I was like, done, fine. I'll spend the $30 or whatever it was. And I had a couple of pedals that I was messing around with. And I was like, this one will be pinned out properly, crimped properly, waterproof, done. Like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Wow. You're adding value, man. Like that's when you put together those kits, I think a lot of people think about their time as being valuable. And so they're like, I'm going to go and do all this research. I'm going to click on these things. I'm going to have 12 different vendors, half of them in China, half of them in the States, all sending me those piece parts, and they're all going to come together. And then it's like, dude, you've already spent hours and hours of your time that could have been used somewhere else. And it's one of those sad things about humankind. So we forget how valuable. I'm constantly reminded that I'm dying each day. It's just like you only have so much time on Earth, and you might as well maximize it.
Yeah. You know what's so crazy? I'm just really right now getting ready to offload purchasing, because that's what I'm doing all day. Like I'm literally just chasing down orders, like 1,000 connectors, 1,000 boards. Oh, where is it at? This vendor, you have to renegotiate every single time you order from these Chinese vendors. It's not like, we settle on the number. Just like next time you're like, why is it $2,200 now? Last time I paid $1,700 for 8,000 connectors, and you're like, You're like, I got to search. So you end up searching for another one, and and then that guy's cheaper. But then the next time you want to order, this guy now has it at $2,200, and then you go to the original guy, then he quotes you $1,700 again. So you have to have like 2 vendors, and you have to alternate because they're always trying to raise the prices up.
Yeah, it's called second sourcing, third sourcing. Yep.
Yeah, and so I'm like, that's mostly what I'm doing. I'm like, how come I'm not making cool videos anymore? I don't have time because I'm chasing parts all day. And I'm like, okay, I need to have.
You should get an intern. You should find an intern that is interested in becoming a global supply manager for.
There you go. Yeah. That's a job.
It's a job.
Someone's job.
You can pay that person somewhere between nothing and minimum wage, and they'll be happy to take that job. It'll be a great resume builder for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'm getting ready to upload it because I just realized this last week that I'm like, I'm spending way too much. And I'm like 2 a.m. in bed, and I'm like, AliExpress. I'm talking to the guy in China because I'm talking to Chinese people in China, right? So they're always, as soon as I'm like ready to go to bed, they're like, hey, do you need anything else? Well, here's what's the tracking number. How many you need? They all want to talk to me when I'm getting ready to go to bed. And so I'm in bed, like texting them like, 8,000. No, this man. No, work on those numbers again because I don't want to pay that much. I need to offload that to somebody else. Buying stuff it's fun for a little while, but after a while it gets.
Are you using WeChat? What are you using to talk to these guys?
Yeah, everything. WeChat, email. I'm trying to pay
The whole
them.
country runs on WeChat. It's amazing.
Yeah, they banned me for some reason. No, they banned me from the other one. What's the other one? The other platform that everybody uses to pay and everything.
Didi?
Not WhatsApp. There's another one.
It's like a Chinese version of PayPal or Venmo, Square kind of thing.
Oh, is it WeChat? No, I think it is WeChat.
Yeah, WeChat, you can send people money, I think.
Yeah, I think it was WeChat. They banned me. No, I don't know. They discontinued my account. They deactivated my account because I didn't use it for 6 months.
I'm still on WeChat stuff from like previous companies that just haven't bothered, like ones I've worked at and vendors I've worked with. And so there's not like a mechanism. It's like if you quit working at a place, they'll get rid of your email and like now you can't log in, that kind of thing. But I don't think anybody's gone back and scrubbed those lists. And so I still see all of their like evening meeting notes and stuff and what's going on in the company and what their top issues are. And so I get to like voyeuristically keep track of all these things.
So now you're still getting that from all the Apple stuff. You getting all the Apple meetings?
No, not the Apple meetings. I'll kick out of those things. But
so that's a good segue to you're now working at somewhere else. Where are you at today?
Yeah, so I think we talked about Neo before, and now I'm still trying to do automotive stuff, but on the charging side. I figure if you're trying to position yourself for the inevitable future of electrification of our transportation, then why not be on the side that provides charging services to all the cars? So no matter who wins, whether it's Tesla or Rivian, or maybe they all find a happy home and they can balance it out. They're all going to need a charge. And so now working at ChargePoint helps me be in a position to make that a reality. So there's a lot of cool products. And anecdotally, when I first started driving an EV, trying to charge some of these stations, and you roll up to a fast DC charger that's CHAdeMO, and it's like at a dealership, it's like in the back corner, like they don't care. And you roll to it and it's out of order. Or you try to use it and it can't communicate properly and it says, sorry, too bad.
Yeah.
Too bad. Like I'm here, but I'm stranded and I've got my wife and kid in the car and I'm looking at the miles to see if I can make it to another level 2 charger and sit there for hours and hours while this thing slow charges at 3 kilowatts on one of the early leafs. And you then start to associate that brand with your discomfort, you know what I mean? So it's one of the things that had me interested in ChargePoint was just that the stability. Every time I used one, it was just like a milk cart, just every time it worked. So they got a lot of cool stuff and some really awesome.
ChargePoint, I think I have an account with them, and I think
actually you do. You're an EV owner.
They have a lot of stations, right? Is there several companies now? It's hard to judge.
Yeah, it's not out when you go out into like public. There's not a lot of competition there. There's a lot of EVSE companies that are making stuff for the home. And a lot of people trying to compete to be in that space. Little dongle stuff you plug into the wall or your hardwire.
But that's just hardware.
Yeah, but like if you go to a hotel or you go to Target, the store, up front it's almost always ChargePoint chargers, and that's because they've got a good track record and their stuff's very robust. So some of the stuff that I'm working on now is like high-powered DC charger stuff that can like push high kilowatt into the car with the CCS connector. So yeah, it's a ton of fun. I love being in it because I still get to hang out with a lot of my old friends and from Tesla and Neo and talk shop with them, and it's been a blast.
How fast are these chargers charging? 50 kilowatt?
Yeah, they're 50 kilowatt chargers, and they can be paired up to do I think 150 kilowatt. Don't quote me on that.
Ooh.
Yeah, one of the fast DC chargers that they offer now, you can use it by itself, or you can have a second one, and then underground they're tied together in parallel. And so if one car pulls up through that parallel connection, they could just dump a ton of power into that person, get them on their way. And then if the second person pulls up, then it starts to share again, and back to being normal.
So what side of that whole process are you working on? Are you on the hardware side, on the marketing side,
Yeah, I do hardware for test. So hardware test engineering. So my team's responsible for making sure that the tests at the factory make a perfect product. That's it. It's the shortest summation of the team. And so if you walk into a factory line, you might see somebody taking what looks like a half-assembled charger and dropping it into a fixture, closing a lid, and little pogo pins come in and connect to it. And a computer will just be vague enough there. A computer would then connect to it and test it, go through all the different sequences, probe it for what it's supposed, the different values that it's supposed to be producing, maybe put a load on it, pretend to be charging a car, and then check. All that stuff's working. Great, it passes. It's stored up into the cloud to say it passed, and then they open it up, pull it out. The operator moves it further down the assembly line, all the way down the line. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're developing those systems.
Those tests, yeah.
Those tests, yeah. I mean, it's a tool that you can use to test your product,
It's
right?
not something that the customers would ever see or use, but it had an interaction with every single product that we ship for at least a moment to test it. And so it's a fun balance. It's a cool thing to get into that it's not as sexy as like, making a new iPhone app or something like that. Like, a lot of people that are getting out of college now are like going after those kind of jobs. But it's a nice blend between software and hardware. You get to know the hardware because you're trying to understand what you're testing. So you have to declare what makes that product, and you enumerate all of those things, and then you create test sequences to go after each one of those and validate that they are correct. There's a lot of the same stuff you're doing. I was, as a side project that I never got, I was having trouble printing stuff on a cylindrical surface. And I know a lot of people have tried this. I think of any examples that have been successful, but and battery hookup, and some of the other folks are doing it manually by having people do the charging. But I was trying to build a machine that had a hopper, so like a big bucket at the top, and you just dump 18650s into it. And as long as they didn't have jagged tabs on them or whatever, they're cleaned up, probably manually by a human, cleaned up and just dropped in there. They could be positive, negative, sideways, crooked, whatever, and it would just shake them and line them up on a rail and then run them through a test. And then you see this stuff at Eric's place where you're just like loading up 18650s, and then you press all the buttons. The same thing you've got all those like individual chargers, and then you come back and it's got the number and you write it on it. I was trying to automate all of that stuff as a hobby, and was gonna have like a side hustle where like I just dismantle these things, dump them into a box. That's the boring. I was trying to get rid of all the boring stuff of like going and checking on them, writing stuff down. I was gonna like
very boring. Yeah.
Grabbed it, completely charged it, then discharged it, and then move it to another stage, or even while it's still captive there, printing the value on there, maybe a little 2D barcode or something like that, like the capacity of it and any other information, maybe like a serial number that internally you're creating a serial number, maybe information about the battery, whether it's an LG or whatever, and then just kicking it down the line. So you create a little assembly line that just cranks out tested 18650s. So that would be test automation. That's kind of what I'm describing. So that would be what somebody in my role would develop that entire system.
Yeah. Those are very useful. I'm going through that right now with those boards. So I try to get China to it's open source, right? So a bunch of these sellers are doing them. They went to my website, downloaded the stuff, got the sellers. So they're ordering and they're putting them together. They're populating the boards, they're soldering them and stuff, and then they're offering them. And I thought, well, they're doing it already. I'll just buy from them and then offer them as populated. It was a nightmare because the quality control is so low, right? Like they don't pay attention. They don't know how to ship. They ship them together like all wrapped.
Yeah.
And by the time you get them, they're all screwed up.
When you've got humans, there's humans in the loop, you can do a bunch of training. You can have it down to a T, and it's great. And then you got 2 shifts that are happening, like a morning and evening shift. And then all of a sudden, Rick and his wife, they get divorced. He's pissed. He doesn't come into work. And then they hire, Susie, and she's fresh on the job, and she hadn't had all that training, but she needs to get it going because there's a backlog of the stuff that Rick didn't do. So there's that human element, and then quality suffers. And so the way that you combat that is like kind of a cat and mouse game where you create tests that no matter how malicious, in some cases, there's some contract manufacturers that you are dealing with where you might be dealing with high volume, high quality products, and you've got a high threshold, but then you leave, you go back home, and you're buying units from them, perfectly good units that passed all your tests. But if you're not there and they need to make a quota, sometimes somebody puts their thumb on the scale, or someone says, yeah, it looks good to me, but they didn't actually look at it, and the solder's all cracked or missing or whatever. And so it's all very normal stuff, and the majority of the problems is just that humans work there. the biggest problem.
Yes. Those dumb humans. Robots. No, so I've been thinking about this because I brought all that work in-house. So now I have a couple people that populate for me. Right. So they just like sit there and they just populate and it's fine until, we get like a customer that's like, hey, the whole side of this one board is not soldered. And you're like, what? Or the fuse is blown, because I put a bunch of fuses on these. And I'm like, oh, it'd be so easy to make like a little jig that you sit on and it just has contact points and it just tests, and it just does like.
Yeah, you either build your own or you can pay somebody 20 grand and they'll make you one.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 20 and 60 grand, depending on how complex that jig is.
Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking of, another thing you might want to look into, which could be like it's an entirely different branch, ton of learning you'd have to do. But there's some open source computer vision solutions that are out there. Yeah, where you would train a deep neural net, not unlike Tesla's cars driving around. You would train it by giving it thousands of examples of working boards that are good. And then you would create like the same place you took the photo from, maybe from top down with that camera. You don't change the camera and you don't change the distance or anything. You kind of leave it all the same. And then you after you trained the model, you would offer up new photos of one that's built. So you just have somebody slide it up underneath the camera. They'd hit a button. It would compare it using the model against all the things it knows are good, and it would give you a pass or a fail.
Yeah.
The fuse, the same thing. You can even zoom in. You get different lenses, and you could zoom in on just the fuses, and it would be able to detect with whether or not one's popped or not. And
that's crazy.
There's YouTube videos that'll show you how to build a classifier in like a couple of hours. It's not a big deal. You can do it.
That's crazy. Yeah, but that's another rabbit hole. You know what I mean? Like that. It's cool.
Or another great intern project for a different.
Another great intern.
Joins.
Hey, these are. And, it wouldn't be that hard because these are technologies that are emerging. And so there's going to be a lot of people that are studying this that are going.
Yeah. How do you get your first job doing computer vision machine learning? Mm-hmm. You're just like, oh, I took this class in college. It's like, okay, yeah, you and tons of other people. But if you had that and, here's a company I worked for a summer, and here's what we built. They can talk about it. It's a practical thing. They got photos.
Here's actual application.
Yeah. And it's like that one little notch puts them above most all other college grads that came out. And I think that computer vision, machine learning stuff coming out of college is going to be a lot like HTML development was in the early days. I remember there was a time when if you could just make someone a home page for their business, just a landing page that you think people could go to, and it had like some photos and like how to contact them and call them on the old telephone. You could be pulling in six figures, back in the 90s, just making websites for people, and all you knew was HTML. That's it, right? And it had a host stuff.
What about the Dreamweaver stuff? Remember what was that?
Yeah, so those things came out, and it just destroyed it.
Flashes, whatever that other.
Yeah, all of a sudden people could make their own websites if they could read. They're like, oh, this isn't so hard, so I'm not going to pay you a bunch of money to do this. And then the other thing was that other people learned, like, oh, my brother's making a bunch of money, my cousin's making a bunch of money making websites. I'm going to go to college and learn how to make websites, web development. And then the whole market just got flooded with web developers, and you could just, they're everywhere. And also, now they make 40 grand a year. I don't know.
Well, but Elon has said, right? Like, he doesn't care about your degrees. He cares about, show me how many of these applications you made, like real world.
Yeah, a lot of companies are going that way. I wish there was like a way where they could publish it, because I know that people get discouraged. Even people that are highly successful have built these things from the ground up, and they're in the middle of a job hunt, and they see requirements, 8 years of this and masters in such and such. And like, shit, I don't have that. And so some of them get discouraged and they don't even apply. My recommendation if someone's watching this is just apply to them, because you never know. I rarely, when I'm reading resumes, and I've hired a ton of people, it's very infrequent that I get to the bottom of the resume to see where they went to school. It's like one of the last things. You put a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you where half the team members that I have, where they went to school. If they went to school, I don't know. I want to see what you've done lately. Were you successful at that? Is there anything in the last couple of years that I've also done so that I can probe you in an interview and see if you're full of shit or not? and that's it. So if you can talk the talk, you build some cool things, and I think you can build cool things for my company. Like
then you're hired. You're a good fit and a good thing. Yeah, right.
Yep.
Yeah, because like going to school, getting a diploma or getting some degree or something.
Yeah.
That you can navigate the.
And more interesting post-COVID, after this thing gets back to normal, there's a bunch of people now that are learning that they can educate themselves. Autodidacts, and they can take courses. There's already college courses that are available online. You won't get a certificate. We have all the knowledge, and there's a bunch of vocational stuff. Mike Rose talked about this. The guy from Dirty Jobs, remember that on Discovery Channel? Mike Rose. I don't know if they're doing Dirty Jobs anymore, but he's branched off and he gives interviews every once in a while. And one of the things he's been harping on for the last few years is that, especially in the States, we lack vocational training. There's a bunch of people out there that are learning how to do, self-driving cars, and they're learning how to, train deep neural nets, but there's not a lot of training on how to build a car or how to fix a car after it's already been broken, that kind of a thing. And so those skills are always going to be in need, and it'll be a natural balance where there won't be enough car mechanics. Now they'll be in high demand, and they'll start demanding higher wages. And so if you're young now and you're stuck at home because you're sheltering in place or whatever, and you don't know if you're back in school anytime soon, just abandon that whole system and go teach yourself how to do something. Align yourself with smart people that are already doing it and learn from them as much as they'll teach you, and then go off and do it yourself. Get involved in stuff that's never going to go away, like auto repair.
Yeah, stuff that can be outsourced to China or other.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton of jobs. Food services comes to mind. You know what I mean? Like, people that can like bake stuff and produce nice things. Carpentry.
Robots.
Robots might make some good muffins, maybe. I don't know.
Yes.
Oh, that's automated. Carpentry, then. You know what I mean? Like artisanal stuff. Things that are bespoke and one-offs. People are going to pay for that stuff. So.
It's weird. I was talking to Misa here, my brother, and he works at a traditional studio, right? Like Warner Brothers or whatever. And he's going remote. Like, he's helping us here. He's like recording this stuff, and that's what he's doing all day. Like, this has become now a market, like this remote talking to people, like, and some of these productions are not going back. You tell me, like, they're not going back to the studio. They're just gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, if they feel like they can do it, they will. I don't know. It depends on how attractive the offering is. I mean, we've had a couple of hiccups today here. It's not perfect. That there's challenges in doing video conferencing or even collaborating together. Like when before COVID, I still enjoyed being in meetings. I would work remotely occasionally, but I'm a social butterfly. I like to see that maybe while so-and-so's talking about an issue, that someone over here had like a grimace on their face because they don't like what he's saying. They disagree, but they're waiting for their turn to talk so they can object. And maybe the conversation changes in a certain way where they don't get that opportunity and then they're quiet. I'm going to go follow up with that person afterwards and say, hey, when old dude was talking about this thing, you didn't seem too happy. What's up with that? Oh, well, he's, doing it the old way. I want to do it the new way. Yeah. And so, but if you're doing a video conference, you don't get that. It's highly unlikely. You're not going to pick it up. And so you lose some of that. And I think there should be some things that are always going to stick around that you can't have online. Barbers are another one, like cutting hair, all those vocations in the world. No,
that's not a good job. I haven't gotten a haircut because they're all close.
Do what I do, man. Do it yourself. Get the buzzer and just go to town.
This close to
all one length. There you go. Yeah, but then there's the other jobs where they've learned, wow, this thing could be automated or not automated. I'm sorry, done remotely, and it's still got to be good quality. It can't just be remote. So, YouTube's getting popular. A lot of people are like I got time now. I'm gonna make a YouTube channel. There's that. We were consuming more.
Do you know a lot of people that are struggling right now because of COVID-19? Like, because their jobs can't go in, they can't make money. They're falling behind on the bills.
Yeah, I mean, personally, we're in a bit of a bubble in the Bay Area, and I think it's one that might pop. Hence, moving to Texas. But because some of the people, like, there's there's definitely a class system that's apparent. You know what I mean? Like you can go around. There's people that are doing really, really well, and then there's people living under a bridge and everything in between. And I think that folks that now you get stuff from Amazon, and things seem okay right now. But when the veil's lifted, and a lot of the people that were kind of in the middle there that maybe worked at a bakery, and that bakery closed down, not like for COVID, but they're out of business now. Those folks probably moved away. So now when everything goes back up, the same people that were like, oh, I'm fine, I make plenty of money, and I'm going to get stuff from Amazon, they're going to try and go back out into the world, and it won't be the same. The bakery's gone, pizza shops closed down, your coffee shop doesn't exist. Starbucks will be open, but the cool local one that you liked going to isn't there anymore. So I think it's going to be different. That doesn't really answer your question. Oh, do I know anybody? Yeah, I know some people that have small businesses that were pumping money into that small business to keep it afloat. And they're a restaurant, so they're doing takeout. And I was like, we talk to people like, oh yeah, they're still open, they're doing takeout. Well, they're open just to like keep their employees paid and keep people going, but they're actually losing $20,000 a month, whatever it is to do takeout. And so that's not sustainable. And eventually it'll run out. And I don't know, but personally, I don't know if folks that are hit that hard by it. But I mean,
it's so weird. I was having a conversation with Misa, my brother, yesterday, where we're like, are we in this bubble, like where everyone that we know is somewhat okay? I mean, it's gonna be rough. Or is this not real? I'm like, I can't tell, because I don't personally know. I know a ton of people should be in trouble right now, right? And we
I'll give you a good example. So there's some people that should have missed their mortgage, missed their rent, but they've got a reprieve from that, whether they just declared it themselves because they saw it on Facebook, or because they actually read the law and they understand what they can do and can't do. But there was stuff in one of the rushed COVID acts that said that you would have a holiday for your rent if you met this criteria or whatever.
You think a lot of people are using that?
Oh yeah. There's something like, there's a lot of folks. I don't remember the number. So I saw something recently. The number surprised me. Let's, for the sake of argument, say it's like 40% of people that were renting decided like, I'm not going to make this month's rent. I'm going to hold this cash because I'm uncertain about the future and what's going on. I might need to buy more food or whatever. I might need to use this money.
But that they just shifted then that hardship down to the landlord.
The landlords will. The landlords end up just being people like you and I, and they've got 3 or 4 properties across town, and they were paying the mortgages on those properties because they weren't wealthy in the true sense. They were wealthy in the debt sense. People were like, "Oh, you got 4 houses."
But they're also qualified for that same.
No. They're the sole proprietor of a business, and that business is going to go bankrupt, and the bank is going to own that house because they didn't own it to begin with. And I think there's going to be a cascading kind of thing that's going to happen. So everything looks fine now because the music's still playing. But if we're playing musical chairs, it's going to stop soon. And there'll be quite a few people that are missing chairs. So it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll be fine. I don't know. There's some fun things you can do with printing money. You keep pumping things into the system. You can make it very attractive for folks to start businesses.
They are printing money.
Yeah, but
they're not printing money, right? Because they're saying now it needs to be cashless. So I don't know.
Maybe not literal money, but like they can just pencil whip some stuff, and now it's in a bank account somewhere, and you can give it out to people. And
they're adding zeros to the bank account. They're just like,
which they can literally do. Yeah, our government has that ability to create money. There's other ways to do it. I'm not a mathematician that studies the economy all that well, but I understand.
That's crazy. Wait, so you're moving to Texas then? Because you're like, screw this place. This California is too restricted, too expensive. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a weird person who's ethically opposed to debt, and so.
It's hard to.
Yeah, I don't participate in a lot of different systems because of that, and. So our plan there is to rent until we understand the area, which neighborhoods are nice and which ones we're going to go to. And then buy a place and be in an area that we hope is a little bit less crazy as far as, draconian laws and that kind of stuff. California is one of the worst for laws and taxes. So I'll give you I brought up the taxes to tell you that I mentioned this, where we're going to rent for a short period of time, to say that what we would have previously just paid on our taxes to California, property taxes for a paid off house. So like, don't have a mortgage, but you still owe, Newsom some money because you live here or whatever, which is fine. That's in Texas, that's like over a year of rent. And when you're renting a place, I don't have to worry about the water heater going out. I don't have to worry about who's cutting the grass. I don't have to worry about depreciation that may or may not happen with the home. I'm just renting the place. And so it's the same as what we're paying here for taxes.
Tax?
Yeah.
Are you paying like the 1% or is it 10%? Because I know like in like Jersey is like 10% or some property taxes is like.
I don't know what the percentage is. I know how much it is, okay. But then if I mention the number, then people will be able to do the math backwards and they'll know how much it's worth.
Well, you're in California, so it's 1%, I think. That means you probably live in an expensive place. Well, you're in the Bay Area, so it's really expensive.
It's already ridiculous, exactly. Yeah. And so some stuff just doesn't make sense, man. And again, this podcast has gone off the rails. I think that I think that there's going to be a bubble in the Bay Area for sure, and I'm not trying to be a part of it. So
yeah, I see. I'm like, so I would actually, I've been working. I've been broke for years, right? And starting the YouTube channel and stuff. But finally, I think, hit critical mass. Finally broke down, say, screw this. I don't want to be broke anymore. Let's start selling stuff and set up so I'll be fine, right? But I think it's going to work out for me because I think there is going to be a housing market crash. Like all these people can't pay the rent.
You think that 2008 happened? There was the derivatives and they were giving home loans to people that shouldn't have had them and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you saw how damaging that was to the housing market. My gut, I can't predict things anymore because 2020 has just been too crazy. I can't call it.
Likely this is going to be much worse.
Much worse. And I don't know how it starts. Who's the first person to call it? Like when's the first person? Even during that housing collapse, places like Cupertino, which is where I lived, they didn't participate. They just said, we see that there's a national housing collapse. Fuck off, not us. And so homes in Cupertino proper held. One street over in Sunnyvale, a third. Stuff that was 900,000, it's 350 now. Back in 2008, 2008, something like that. And so if you know that's coming, our gut tells us that there's probably going to be some sort of correction, and the housing might be one thing that becomes cheap. Now is the time to just be saving like crazy. Sell anything that's not bolted down around the house. Squirrel away some money because you might be able to buy a property real cheap. Just be the house next to you. Buy it, that kind of thing. Or if you're renting now, stay renting. Now's not the time to go get a massive mortgage on $1 million house near LA. Don't do it. Hang back and get one for $450, next year.
And I'm just gearing up. I was gonna buy a house in the next year or two, right? That's what. And I'm like, oh my god, now I might be able to buy 2 houses, with the same price that I would have spent because of this is happening. So it's kind of weird that we're kind of like wolves just circling around a dying animal kind of thing, right? And the dead animal's the American.
Yeah. The last thing I was able to call was the lockdown, how bad it was. And we were talking about WeChat before, because I saw on WeChat, people were talking about there's a person at the street corner dead on a bus stop. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's fast. Whatever they're catching is coming on fast enough where you couldn't even get to the hospital. And so I had about a month of a heads up that this thing was eventually going to come over this way. And so I had a chance to stock up and that kind of a thing. But past that, and then I knew that it was going to go past April 30th, May timeframe, because there was some quickly passed laws that freed up money that people could use to fight COVID. And those didn't have a description to say, oh, use the money in this way and you're good. It said, use the money by this date and you're good. After that date, the money's not available for you anymore. And so if you're getting a bunch of money to fight COVID, of course, you're going to make sure that it goes all the way up until that last day. You're going to be claiming that COVID's horrible and it's the worst thing ever. So you can actualize that. And now I'm thinking it's probably more leaning closer to November for the election. So once we get to the election, then you have a coin toss. Either it starts getting better or maybe it gets worse, depending on what country.
But the damage is done, though. There's a lot of damage that was done this year. Definitely ruining a lot of people, ruining a lot of businesses.
Yeah,
I
wouldn't know who to invest in outside of Tesla for long Square. Those kind of companies seem like they can weather the storm. But I just be doing, even on the downside, I'm going to keep doing what I always do, which is just put money into mutual funds and forget about it. That's the crop method.
It's weird. I don't know. I can't get a feel if we're just in this bubble that we're all doing somewhat okay, and we don't really know the people that are really struggling, or the struggling is not that real, or I don't know. It's like, I think yesterday we were like, no, I think we just forgot that we're not so poor anymore. Like because all growing up, we were like nothing. I come from nothing, right? And apparently, maybe we're not there yet. We haven't been there for a while. We just haven't realized it yet, or something. It's like, but
that we're out of touch with some things. I admit that.
It's so easy, right? It's easy to do that. Like you just forget. Like I haven't struggled to pay the car payment in 5 years, and you're like, oh, I forget what that is like, or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Or for me, we've been debt free for like 15 years or longer, probably longer.
Wow. So even the home, you paid it off.
Yeah, paid off a home. That took longer than 15 years, but it was like saving, and every time we had extra cash, we put it on the house until the mortgage is gone. Paid off in like 7 years, and no credit cards, no car payments, no nothing. But to your point about forgetting about it, I sometimes forget that other people use credit cards. I see something like, or somebody buy a new boat, and I'm like, how do they like I know that person pretty well. Like, where do they get the money to buy a boat? I'm like, oh right, people can just sign it, get a boat. You know what I mean? So I forget that people use debt sometimes. There's another thing that other people forget that they do. But in California, it's very taboo to smoke in California anywhere. You can't smoke in restaurants, you can't smoke in bars, that kind of thing. And although I wasn't a smoker before, so I didn't have like a struggle, to get off of it or whatever. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody smoking, and I'm like, oh right, people smoke. I forgot that people smoke. You had that little moment where you had to remember. But I'm sure the last time I had that, I was flying back from Mexico, and I landed in Texas somewhere, like one of the major airports there, and they had a restaurant, and it had a glass wall in the middle and a door, and this half of the restaurant was smoking, and this half was non-smoking. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I hadn't been, and I'm watching them through the window, like a lady like eating her burger and then puffing on a cigarette and eating her burger like at the same time. And I'm like watching like their fish in a fish tank. It was cool.
Wow. You forget that people do still smoke, but I think 480,000 people die a year from related, which is another point that we were like, people were using to say like, hey, this virus is not that bad. More people die from smoking, which is a weird thing that in California we don't even see. It's right. Yeah, it's you're weird if you're smoking. You're like, what? Okay.
Stop doing that. Maybe look at that scene for smoking. Be all right.
It's like watching an episode of Mad Men. Remember Mad Men, that show?
Yes, I'm a big. I think smoking, the act of smoking, is cool. There's no denying that. You watch Mad Men, you're like, man, that is so cool.
And drinking. They're always drinking, like every Tuesday. Like,
all of a sudden, I want to get like a strong scotch and a smoke, man. Peer pressure. Marketing.
That was the time, man. That was the time to live right there. I mean, as long as you were not a minority, it was a time to live. As long as you were a woman.
Now's pretty good. I think now's a great time to be alive. We got Star Wars.
2020 is crazy, man. Yeah. I don't know. Crazy is gonna go in books, definitely, in the history books. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's gonna look like we were crazy, definitely.
Can you guys think about Blake for it?
How are you doing on time?
He did, yeah. So, yeah. You were one of these guys. I remember you talked to me about that value for value way back in the day, and I was like, yeah, that's a cool thing. That's not like for me or whatever. I think my path was a little bit different. It was like making a website, selling things or whatever, right? Like,
yeah, you kind of just have to. It is different for everybody. Like as an example, it makes me slightly hypocritical, but I don't have a PO box on my YouTube channel. I don't mention people, but I've got a PayPal account that they can subscribe to. And part of that's because I don't need the money to do my thing. It's a hobby, and if I'm working on something, I grab the camera real quick, I record it, and I try to make it presentable, that kind of a thing, and gamify YouTube to see if I can make my stats go up. And I think I make like $200 a month from my YouTube channel. Like I'll randomly get a check for like $180, $204. I'm like, cool. But it's not, I don't feed my kids with that. So I don't necessarily need it in that way. But for other people that are doing this full time, I think just, even if you don't ever push it, just having a link in your descriptions, like, here's my PayPal, click this, and you want to have it go to a landing page where it's like, it has baked in donation amounts, $5, $10, whatever. And it goes directly to you. PayPal gets their tiny little cut, but not as much as Patreon does.
Yeah.
But then
and
also,
they at least don't seem to care about what you're talking about, and and censoring you, right? PayPal.
Yeah, they're a middleman for sure. So then maybe let people send you checks. I don't know. But you also want to leave an option where people can send you whatever amount they want. Leave it open. And let them surprise you by sending you $100 or $111 because they like the number one.
I even have a link for Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, sure. I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin because it's like, again, that's another step you got to go through to do the thing, and you can't pay your rent with Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like when it comes in, like you have to convert it. It's a big pain in the dick. So I don't mess around with it too much. But as an example, when Adam, the guy that's one of the hosts for the No Agenda show, when he went on Joe Rogan, he mentioned this model and was explaining to people like, hey, we just leave it open, that kind of thing. And because of the topics they discussed, there was a ton. You don't realize how popular Joe Rogan is until you go on his show, and then he drives traffic to you, even if it's just for that week while you're on the show, and then it tapers off, right? The podcast was like thousands of % higher in viewership that next week after being on Joe Rogan. It's massive. And then within just a week or two, there were people that liked the No Agenda podcast enough after discovering it from Joe Rogan. They're already donating, sending in.
Wow.
Yeah, they'll send in $1,000, $500.
Wow.
And the show reciprocates by mentioning their name, maybe reading a little bit of a note that they sent in with their PayPal donation, as long as it's above a certain level. You can't read all of them because you'll be there all day. But you get above a certain bar, they'll read it. And then you're kind of interacting with the show that way. You're showing them that you care about it, that kind of thing. So it's not for everybody, but if someone's doing YouTube full time or just creating content full time, I would highly advise people give it a try. And even
I think I will have to try this for this podcast because we're not monetizing this podcast yet. Right? We're kind of trying some things here and there.
Back to the monetization thing. If let's say you did, I don't want to cause controversy for yourself, but let's say that all of a sudden something happened and
get views, man. Come on.
It's less about views, but if you had a steady, or you had people that were supporting you monetarily, you can't be canceled. Short of being kicked off of YouTube, if you're people that advertise with you and stuff, if they all of a sudden dry up, or maybe just because of the economy, they say, look, Jehu, we don't have the budget to do a spot with you this month. We'll revisit it later. And all of a sudden it goes down and down and down. Having regular contributors send you money, like, gives you an amazing position that other people don't have.
You don't have to worry about it. Yeah, like I wanted to get like a cop in here and talk to him right now, right? It's like, how do you feel about what the American people are saying? I mean, like, not everyone is saying that they're, have an issue with bad cops, but enough Americans obviously have an issue that they're out in the streets burning things. You know what I mean? Like, how does that make you feel? I wanted and I know that would bring, some people wouldn't like that. If I had sponsors, maybe they wouldn't like where the conversation would lead.
Right.
But I mean, like right now, I'm like, hey, we're not making money anyway, so it's like, bring them out.
So now that you made it to the end of this podcast, right? So the people who are still watching this really care about your content. They don't mind it being long form, which is another thing that I enjoy about YouTube and podcasts. Like, you don't have we didn't have a commercial break other than you having to utilize the latrine. We didn't have to wrap up a train of thought to say, oh, well, we got to go to a thing because we're selling mattresses, or I've got shaving kits or whatever that I got to hawk. So you didn't break up our natural conversation. And so if somebody made it this far in your podcast, they care about you. They care about what you're doing. This might be the first podcast that you put something down there. Put a PayPal link. Like, here, prove shit.
We have that, right? But I don't know. Are we getting anything? I don't know.
Patreon, but maybe we should do
we have a Patreon. No one signed up to the Patreon? Oh, we have one person signed up.
One brave
Nice.
soul.
One brave soul is signed up,
All
right?
right.
But we
Well,
haven't
on this,
pushed
on this
it.
podcast, let's pick a number. How about like the number 3? If they donate $3, that means that they think it's a cool idea and that they'll probably donate in the future. If
there
they think
you go,
it's a dumb
viewers.
idea, they can send $4 to tell you to check a vote for not liking that idea.
3 means you like it. We shouldn't change anything. 4 means, hey, get on board, be better.
Yeah, no, just they don't like the donation concept.
They don't like the donation.
If they send $10,000, you'll consider vetoing it entirely.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good concept. So yeah, we kind of have to figure it out here. Like right now we're starting out and I'm like, look, I just want to do this, right? Like, cause it's a thing. I enjoy watching long form like you. And I don't know if I'm good at it. Whatever. I'm gonna give a try, but no one's good at it from the gate, right? So this is a good way to get good at it.
Are you familiar with signal to noise ratios?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So another very popular podcaster, his name is Arduino versus Evil, and he does something similar where he's got a Patreon account and people chuck him some money to buy beer and buy stuff for the show. He's doing like DIY projects and stuff in his garage. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't bother to interact with too many of the commenters, but he interacts with his Patreons. And that's because they're stuff about it. So if you decide to do that, say, hey, if you're donating, I'm for sure, I'll come over here, I'll try and answer those questions. Everyone else, like, maybe I'll get to you when I get to you. You would stop having to field all the questions about, like, hey, what if you added a turbine to the top of your bus? Yes. And you could generate power while you're driving down the street. And
capacitor.
Hear me out on this.
Bank of capacitors.
Super caps. Do you know about super caps, Jay? You could get a whole bunch of them. Yeah, so you don't have to even look at those comments anymore because the people that are sending you $5, $80, whatever, they're a little bit smarter than the average bear, and they're not. You don't have to do.
So they value the content.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's gonna be a thing because I definitely don't. My thing is not a sponsored content. Like we can't get $1 from anyone. You know, it's like, hey, we get thousands of views on these things. They're like.
Nobody cares. You got to roll your own, man. Those super chats are cool too. I don't know how much they take of those, but that's another kind of thing. You've seen those.
Super chats. I think when I do the Q&As, which I stopped doing, I think I'm gonna go into this transitional thing right now because I've been working really hard on setting this place up right here. But I think once I finish this place, and then I can go back to like making videos regularly. I think the Q&As will play a part of that because I think that's the only time that I definitely stop reading most of the comments. Like I just don't have time. And they're the same questions over and over again. And yeah, I'm like, but the live chats, that's a good thing because then you get to talk to people and, you're like, what are you guys building? What are you doing? You get to have a feel for what people are doing kind of in real time. I don't know if it's real conversations, but real-time conversations. It's whoever shows up, I think, right?
Yeah, and there's also the novelty of people being able to interact with you. Like, where they send a comment, one, they don't know if you're going to read it or not. Maybe you get a reply back, then they know you read it. But YouTube's a very one-way thing. But the streaming where you're doing a Q&A session, even a moment, like there's people that probably idolize you or think you're cool for doing X, Y, and Z. And so when they get a moment to talk to you, they're like, oh, that's awesome. And now you've made their day. They're going to be a subscriber for life, that kind of thing. And so it's a great way to interact with your community.
Yeah, mods.
Because I've been in other ones where the moderator, right, goes in and they can like field the questions for you because you're like busy doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end, boom, okay, let's do
pre workout.
Brian can help out with that. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
I did some live streams for my channel, but like 3 people showed up, so it's a little less engaging.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's hard to get people to show up. It's like, and I'm actually not doing that great right now because my content is suffering because I'm literally doing like the low hanging fruit. I'm like, what can I make a super quick video right now that doesn't require any planning from me, whatever. Because I'm like, I don't have time. I gotta order parts. I gotta finish the shop, But eventually I'm like investing in this thing. I'm like, it'll be all right. I'll come back full time to YouTube and we'll make some cool content. I have all these conversions. I don't know. Do you know, right? I have those buses that I bought.
I see all the cars piling up in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I gotta start. Oh, by the way, and so like these new batteries that we're dealing with, I'm selling on the website right now, I can literally make 200 miles for like $3,000. So it's crazy because I can get 100. So it's, how much are they? I did the math, and they're 444 watt hours. These I call them scooter batteries, but they're not really scooter batteries. But
those are the long ones, right? The elongated ones with the BMS going the full length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's thousands of those, right? Oh, by the way, no, I can't say there's thousands because people have. There's a lot of negativity that is involved in those batteries. So the less I say, the less
the facts. Who just talk about it. Just stick to the facts. You'll be all right.
But I did the math. I can fit about 140 of those in the floor.
Yeah, the belly of the bus.
That's on the Bmw bus. So it's 144 times. So it's 62 kilowatt hours, and you can buy them on my website right now for like $3,000, $3,500.
Bmw bus is just like the midget. They don't weigh a lot, so you're already doing really well there.
They don't weigh a lot, but they're big and
I'm interested in. I texted Rich a photo of the Rover Mini that I worked on not too long ago, and I'm kind of bummed because I bought that one. I bought it. It had been left out in the sun and been damaged and stuff, and so I did a full paint job and cleaned it all up and tuned up the motor, and then sold it on. It was a fun profit for that one, but it was probably a year before I got into EV conversions, and that Mini Cooper would have been perfect to do an EV conversion. And then when I saw him, I was like, why is this guy like independently doing, like, getting into all the same stuff that I'm into, you know what I mean? And I shot him a text real quick.
Yeah, did you see that last video that he made where he announced that he's gonna go back to doing gassers because he's tired of the Tesla?
Yeah. They took down his video.
People took it out. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, there's a lot of automated systems where you get thousands of people telling you that video is offensive or breaks the rules. Because there's liability there, YouTube's gonna take it down instantly without even reviewing it, and then they'll go look at it. Yeah, 3
times in a row or something. Like they literally took it down like multiple times.
Yeah, which is great for him. That's awesome. I wish YouTube took down one of my videos so I could make a video about how they took down one of my videos. That'd be awesome.
Really?
Yeah. Sure. Controversy sells, man. That's awesome.
Damn. Yeah, this is his audience basically telling him, like, we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah,
we don't like it.
He's got zealots on that side, man. I get him on my channel occasionally too, because I had the i3 for a while. I've had some other electric cars on the channel, and you get a mixed bag. You get some people that are like super passionate about it, and
the cult.
It's definitely.
I gotta start. So I realized that I've tamed down a lot lately. Like, I'm just in the middle. I'm not making any waves. I'm just like, hey, buy my little battery things. You know, I'm not saying any, like, I'm not sharing my opinions. You know, I'm just like, oh, you think about that? Oh, that's cool. Hey, whatever. You know, like, but in the early days, I used to be more opinionated and used to push people's buttons more and stuff. And
yeah, we should get back to that. For people that are watching, again, people that made it this long into your podcast, you and I should come up with like a faux beef. Like, we should get beef between our channels, right? And then come like manufacture controversy. And then anybody that watched this specific podcast and made it this long would know they'd be in on the joke. But then everybody else would just watch it all unfold. We could have like a full story and like a denouement and a resolution. It'd be awesome. We could be friends.
You made a video on showing people how to take down my videos, you know, how to report them. And then I took it, dude. Yeah, that's the way to do it.
I could accuse you of being like in the pocket of big lithium ion.
Yeah.
And then you're anti-super cap because you don't want the technology to get out, and you're still trying to make money selling the old technology. It'd be awesome.
That's right. Well, no, hey, I got accused of that by one of these new YouTubers.
Or you're suppressing free energy machines. That,
Oh, that's right, free energy.
don't forget about free energy,
No,
man.
there's plenty of like real beef going around with us YouTubers. I had an issue with one of these guys that his name is DIY, and he doesn't do any DIY. Like, and then he announces that he paid some contractor to come and install his solar system, and I'm like, how is this guy DIY? Why do you have the DIY name in your name? Like,
you've literally done nothing yourself.
Yeah, it's like, but whatever. I'm like, and then he came and attacked me on one of my videos, and he was like literally just posting and like a bunch of comments, and so I had to ban him. I'm like, listen, I like you, you're cool, but like this is kind of getting out of hand. I'm like, banned, blocked, and so then he blocked me from his channel. So now I don't like him. He doesn't like me, and every once in a while, I'm like to give him a jab. You know,
People love that stuff. Yeah, I also noticed that like the type of commenters you get depends on the content you make. So I made in the Bay Area, I had access to buy a development kit PlayStation Vita, the handheld one. So this is one that a game developer would have used. It had extra ports, and you could run unsigned code on it. Like you had the keys of the city. It didn't need hacking. It was just completely open. You do whatever you want with this thing.
Wow.
Yeah. And I knew it was an oddity. Nobody else had seen it on the internet. And so I made a video about it. I call it the rarest PS Vita ever. And that one had a ton of views compared to my other videos. But then the type of people are like teenage boys that play the current Vita. You know what I mean? And it got recommended to them. And they were brutal, man. Like they'd like make fun of you or like talk about like you're an idiot because of X, Y, and Z, or it's not really rare. This one's rarer. You know, it's like, and I never got that kind of stuff on any of my other videos. And all of a sudden this one just, and it's flooding. It's coming in. This is back when it showed like a 99 plus on the little icon in the corner. And I was like, holy crap, there's that many comments, you know, ever.
Wow. Yeah. I used to try to make viral videos. Right when I started at first, and I was lucky enough that I got a viral video that kind of went viral, right? But one of those that kind of hit was something I did about Casey Neistat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the comments on those, were crazy. They were completely different than everything else. And it was the same thing. It was all his fans. They were coming and attacking me because I was making fun of them or I was talking.
You weren't doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. I wasn't worthy of talking about Casey, right? But it was funny.
That's fun stuff. I'm excited to see what happens on YouTube.
What's your YouTube channel?
It's Julian's Random Project.
Julian's Random Projects, and you do random projects there.
That's it, man. In frequency and type. Like right now, I've been busy with the move and work. You know what I mean? So I rarely post, but there's stuff up there. The most recent one is that. I made a simulator that tricked my Tesla into thinking that it was driving around town, and I was able to enable autopilot in my garage, and it was yeah. You should go watch that one. It's fun.
I gotta go watch that.
Yeah. So after I moved into the new place in Texas, I'll probably set it up again, and I'll do more surround stuff, and I'll play with different things. Maybe try and get it up on a dyno or something, and let the wheels spin. We'll see.
Yeah. How do you keep the wheels from spinning? Did you explain all that?
Yeah, you know, in like maybe not now, but like now that it'll go through green lights. But there was a period of time where you could enable. You'd be sitting at a stoplight, and there's a car in front of you. You could enable it, and then it would sit there and wait, and then it'd go forward. And then when it would go forward, the version of the software I had saw that it was a red light, and it was asking me to acknowledge or press the gas to go forward. And so as long as I didn't touch those two things, it wouldn't go barreling out of my garage door, which it would have if I had touched those buttons. It would have tried to follow a fake car that was being played back to it on a HD projector. And so...
so you visually tricked it?
Yeah. That whole system is vision-based. That's Elon's thing. He doesn't have LiDAR, he doesn't have radar. Or he has radar and ultrasonic. But ultrasonic's for close range, so you don't bump into, you know, like the broom in your garage. And the radar's there. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, there's some video that people like this guy Green, who does some dismantling of firmware and pulls stuff out from the Tesla you're not supposed to get. He has some video where he's able to overlay what the radar sees, but radar is not high resolution. So if there might be a dot that's representing a traffic sign is this big, but on radar it's like just one dot. You know what I mean? So that one dot could also be a kid, or it could be, you know, a truck that's really, really far away. So radar's not super high res, which is why Elon is relying on, or and publicly talked about relying on vision only. So if you play back vision to the system, it doesn't know it's not any wiser. It thinks that it's driving around downtown Hawaii or something, you know, like you can't.
No,
yeah.
That is watching a movie.
It doesn't know it's watching a movie. It's a robot. It's stupid. It thinks it's in the real world and it's doing its best to react to it. So then, now that it's engaged, then I would change the scene. I'd jump to some future scene and you'd see all the cars move around it on the cluster. Like a truck would come by. You'd see it go by on the thing. And so you could, I think that in the future, there'll probably be companies out there, whether for a competitive edge on the system that they're working on, or just to start maybe rating different autonomy systems, are going to come up with simulators like this, where you don't ask for permission. You go buy Ford's latest offering. You go buy Chevy or the latest Tesla. You drop it into a simulator and you run it through its paces and you give it a score, like a crash test score or something. You'd say, hey, this new version started to detect the little girl popping out between two cars where previously it didn't. We're going to give it an extra point. And then maybe later in the year they regress and all of a sudden they can't detect the little girl that pops out between the two cars. And so you knock it off a point. The same way that the EPA tested Tesla's cars for range, and they left the door open. And so the battery ran down through the night, and then they came back out and did the test, and they were down a few miles. And Tesla's like, hey, we know what this should be, what happened. And they looked at the data, they were able to see what was up. Those kind of tests. So there'll be tests like that for autonomy, is my prediction in the future.
Yeah.
Third party.
And it needs to be done, because it's kind of freaky driving down your Tesla on autopilot. Because I kept thinking like stuff like, okay, what's keeping this thing from freaking out? Right? I know there's a lot of safety things, like the fact that it's got two different systems and they all have to match. They have to make the same decision, and if it doesn't match, it'll run the thing again until they both agree. Right? But what if
sometimes that's done in hardware? Like you'll have two CPUs that are lockstep together, and they're processing. If one disagrees with a checksum that doesn't happen, or a like it's validating something, and like I said, do that. And then that's the one I'm familiar with. I'm not familiar with like two separate autonomy systems having to agree. It's usually just the processor. But then might be the case.
There's two completely different systems, and they must agree on that decision. Every decision, it's like
that's some redundancy. But you're asking like what keeps it from freaking out completely. Right now, it's you, the human in the loop. So it's still required.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like when you're sitting there and you're going, the other day I was like driving and the thing was going, right? And I get nervous and there's a wall. And then I was like, what's keeping this system from just like freaking out and saying like, okay, if it sees something, remember that one time that you picked us up in that Tesla? Mm-hmm. And we were talking, we weren't paying attention. You're like speeding up. You're like showing us.
I'm trying to get up to speed on the freeway. Which is what you do.
You're showing us how fast ludicrous car goes, but you're not paying attention to the road. And someone gets in front of you, and literally the Tesla stopped for you, right? It slammed on the brakes. Right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, it freaked out and it slammed the brakes on, right?
In a positive way that kept us from having to file a bunch of paperwork and. Yeah.
No, it saved us, right? Yeah. But it's only saving us if there's something there and it prevents you from like what's it keeping it from like freaking out, thinking that there's because it also will change lanes, right?
Yeah. It is literally. I'm sure the person that designed an autonomy system would give you a long list of stuff that it does, but it is right now still up to the human. And it reminds me of when I first got my i3. I think they fixed this in firmware at some point because it only happened twice. When I was driving down 101, there was this one specific overpass. The shadow that it cast on the ground during my commute, it thought was a car dead stopped on the freeway. And so I'm doing 70 miles an hour, and then it sees it. It locks up it starts to lock up the brakes to avoid it hitting it. And the person behind me thinks I'm an insane person because they can see through my windshield and they can see there's not another car there. And I'm hard braking, at least the car is. And so you have to quickly have your wits about you and then disengage that system or press the gas and say, no, this isn't a problem. Go ahead and go forward, right? No, it's definitely a problem. And we should have another podcast where we talk about like the potential security risks. Like, what if another nation state or a bad actor decides to connect it into your car, and you're already drive-by-wire, right? There's manual override, but it's drive-by-wire. And what's to prevent me from making a car that's already doing maybe 80 miles, 90 miles an hour down the freeway, and I just press a button and I make it go hard left into a ravine or just into the oncoming traffic or whatever. So there's all these things. All these things are possible. And there's going to be a lot of work to keep them from happening. And being there's no point in going in and trying to kill a diplomat when you can just have their autonomous car drive into a brick wall.
Everybody has accidents.
Everybody has accidents.
These are the famous words of the mafia guys, right? It's like everybody has accidents.
Every day. Why take a chance? Yeah.
Everybody.
We're gonna have to talk to someone in autonomous.
It's dangerous. He's worked for autonomy.
There's if people want to get a primer on that, there was a talk that was given. There was a black hat that I went to, and there were two guys that found some vulnerabilities in Chrysler vehicles. They told Chrysler about it, gave them like 6 or 9 months to fix it. And then they said, look, because we're security researchers, we eventually need to publish this because that's how we get paid. And so that one is interesting because for the longest time, if I get access to your car, like the CAN bus, I can do lots of bad things. But I had to get physical access to your car. Their particular hack went over the Sprint LTE network and had the ability to connect to any VIN number that was above a certain model type that had that computer in it, like the infotainment system. And that's how they got in, was over the infotainment. It's like you think you're downloading like new maps and songs and stuff to listen to on your road trip, but it's the same connection that hackers, they proved that they were able to connect through that and then get onto the CAN bus, and they were able to control the wipers, the steering wheel, all that stuff. They didn't do more because they're just doing it for research. But the moment you can make someone's windshield wipers come on, that means you can do anything else you want. Yeah. They got real popular really fast. A bunch of other like sensational news agencies interviewed them, and they're like,
Yeah, I remember watching that. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
People should go back and watch their black hat talk. It's also long. And you'll they break it down. They tell you every single command that they typed and how they got in, and what steps they took, and all the different phases of testing that they went through to prove it out. And you learn a lot. And there's not, other than having better security, there's not a lot that's changed since then. So
yeah, except that the cars are more powerful and they have more autonomous features now.
Yeah, more controls. But you only need 2 controls. That was another project I have that I meant to revisit. If I had kept the MG Midget, there's a company called Comma.ai. If anybody knows Comma people, hit me up. I want to talk to them. And I have mutual friends with George Hotz, who's the guy that owns it, but I don't want to engage with them just yet because I need to get my ducks in a row. But to have an autonomous car, you only have to have longitudinal and latitudinal control. So that's forward and back and left and right. That's it. That's all that thing's doing. It's either going forward or backwards or left or right. And so if you do, the MG Midget had a motor controller that was CAN, and I was using Jack Rickard's JevQ to control it. Yeah. So I can now, with a laptop, just ones and zeros, I can make it go forward and backwards as fast or as slow as I want. So that's done. Check that box. Then if I go get an electronically controlled power steering unit out of a Ford's a common one, the one out of the Lexus I've heard does, it can be adapted to other cars. There's guys that are putting in these in their old hot rods and their classic cars, because all you give it is 12 volts, high current 12 volts, and you've got buttery smooth power steering.
I'm looking for one for my buses.
2 wires. Look up the one from it's an older Prius, which is great because you can get it from junkyards and stuff. And it's not expensive. It's like, $200, $150.
Yeah.
So you give it 2 wires and you have power steering. Those same systems have a CAN plug, so you can tell it between 0 and 360 degrees exactly where to move to.
Yeah.
So now I have latitudinal control. So with those two things, the Comma.ai guys make a autonomous computer that hangs up in your windshield, and it just plugs into your CAN bus. And depending on the maker model, you can tell it which maker model car you have. And they've already got all the code to steer it and move it forward and backwards.
Oh, wow.
And that
camera?
What's that?
Does it have cameras and stuff, or how
It's
does
got
it?
the one. Yeah, it's got the one camera going forward, and I think they might do like a wide angle and like a tight, so two cameras.
Okay.
But for most people, if you're on the freeway and you can hit cruise control and kind of kick back and it adjusts the speed and keeps you in your lane, for most people, they're like, all right, this is a self-driving car. You and I know that's different. That's not a full self-driving car, but it's pretty close. And so just for the lulz and the clicks on YouTube, I'm planning on getting an old car, converting it to electric so that it's easier to control, and then making it an autonomous classic car.
Yeah.
So I gotta do it before somebody else beats me to it, because it's such a simple thing.
Now you put it out there.
I know. At the race.
We're going to the junkyard tomorrow to get that electric rack and make my bus. Yeah, fully autonomous. All right, man. Look, listen. Yeah, that's. Wait a minute. That's 3 hours.
Nailed it.
Wow, 3 hours. We went 3 hours. So, thank you for joining me. It was interesting. I thought I was gonna try and help you sell that car, but it turns out you already sold it.
So the best way I know how, man. Just keep lowering the price until someone snags it.
Yeah.
There goes your
There
question.
you go. Yeah, there goes my commission. Dang. Oh well.
Appreciate
No,
it.
but yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, let us know. We'll have you back sometime to
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
how Texas.
I'll give you a follow. I'll tell you how Texas is going. See you, man.
Yeah, and do you want to plug in your channel, or you have it?
Sure, you guys just try maybe put a link in the description so people can click through. But Julian's Random Projects on YouTube.
Yeah, and if you want to watch that video about the Tesla going crazy or him tricking the thing, I
gotta watch that one.
I want to watch that one because
comment and then let me know that you came over from Jehu's channel, so I know.
Yeah, there you go, and watch and see how we can trick a Tesla into thinking that it's driving. Ooh, can you imagine that? Yeah, that's scary. That is scary stuff. So, all right, well, yeah, we'll see you next time. We'll definitely thank you for joining me, and good conversation. You got.
Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
All right, we'll see you.